Chair. We're now live on YouTube. I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's Virtual Strategic Planning Committee on Thursday the 29th of September 2022. I'm your Vice Chair, Councillor Ollie Davies, standing in for Councillor Arnott, who's somewhat delayed at an event. Based on a decision of the Council to continue virtual meetings until the 31st of October 2022, I would like to remind both members and the public attending or watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers. We will continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our Constitution. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. Any members of the public can view the agenda by visiting our website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. So Councillor Arnott's going to be a bit later. So Chair, Councillor Davies.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Allen? No. Councillor Bailey is going to join us a little bit later. Councillor Blakey?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward? Councillor Howe?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ingham?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger? Thank you. I did hear that. Thank you. Councillor Moulding has sent his apologies. Councillor Pratt?
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Skinner?
Present. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. I confirm we are quorate for today's meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 1 is public speaking, and we have 7 speakers registered to speak on item 7. We'll start with Councillor Alistair Bruce speaking on behalf of Fennerton Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, Councillor Bruce, and Wendy will remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Apologies, Chair or Vice Chair. If I could remind you, you were going to go to members to appoint a Vice Chair or a Deputy Chair,
indeed.
In case you are unable to proceed.
Absolutely.
Just procedural.
Okay, no, that's fine. Let's make sure we have a Vice Chair for the this part of the meeting. So I'd like to nominate Councillor Mike Howe. Shall we take a vote on that when Mrs. Shaw will just vote in the usual way if everybody's happy to accept Councillor Howe?
Please indicate with your green tick, members of committee only, or a red cross if you're not in agreement, or raise your electronic hand if you're abstaining.
7 votes in support and 1 abstention. So
Councillor Key isn't a member of the committee, so it doesn't count. So yes,
oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, members. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to Councillor Bruce now, speaking on behalf of Fennerton Parish Council. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to start by referring the committee to the comments from the planning inquiry of 2014. The sites before you have been considered before, and the planning inspector only passed 1 small site, and it's conceivable that even this site would not have been granted had it not been a brownfield site rather than open farmland. The inspector concluded unequivocally that Fennerton is not a sustainable location for new large-scale housing developments. This statement is as valid today as it was in 2014. To see the description of services and infrastructure within Fennerton described as modest in the report before you is, I believe, grossly misleading. With 1 pub, 1 small shop, a school at maximum capacity and no medical services, it would best be described as low, given the large size of the current population. The road infrastructure in and around Fennerton is typical of many East Devon villages and is inadequate for the current level of traffic use, let alone any additional burden from future development. The number of potential jobs within easy access to the village is tiny, with most employment opportunities requiring a car journey, which is contrary to EDDC policy to encourage less car use. Despite the possible resolution to past flooding events due to the soon-to-be completed flood alleviation plan, this is yet to be tested and is likely not to have been future-proofed for increased runoff from new developments. I can only implore the committee to try, for a moment, to put themselves in the shoes of these villagers who have lived with the dread of the late-night knock on the door from the flood warden. The dangerous and frightening scenario of more devastating and frequent flooding may hang over this village for some time yet. I believe that the categorization of the majority of sites as 4 and 5 is not supported by the facts and is in direct conflict with the 2014 decision of the planning inspector. With perhaps one exception, Fennerton 05 is a brownfield site and an infill for the village. Both myself and the parish believe that this site could well enhance Fennerton were it included going forward and tidy up an otherwise derelict area. Finally, although this could be described as a generalization, the recent spate of sewage discharges into our bathing water has only served to once again highlight the glaringly obvious inadequacies of our currently overloaded system. Any additional large-scale development within the Fennerton area will only serve to further overload the system, and with the proximity to the River Otter will further endanger our water quality and environment. I'll finish by saying this. It's been suggested that I sit here and try and comment on each site as it comes up. I do not believe for 1 minute that that would be helpful or constructive, as I have faith in the good sense of this committee to remember the salient points I make here without me popping up constantly to remind them. Someone once said less is more, and I believe I have made the case for Fennerton well enough for you good people to come to the correct conclusion for this village. I want to thank the committee for hearing my concerns for Fennerton. I commend you for your deliberations and stamina and your commitment to this arduous task. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Didn't even need a 30-second reminder. Okay, and we'll move on to Councillor Graham Long, who's going to speak on our pottery. And I think we've got another speaker after that. Wendy, you have a statement to read, I think. Is that to do with our pottery?
Yes, that's correct. That's from Councillor Brown.
That was it. Yep. Okay, so Councillor Long.
Good morning. Chairman and councillors, I speak on behalf of a Pottery Parish Council to request that you include the site identified in our pottery during the 2017 Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment in the Emerging Local Plan 2020 to 2040. This site was removed from consideration at your meeting in July 2021 on the advice of officers, but it was identified as meeting the desire for more housing in the parish when a survey was conducted during neighbourhood planning preparation in 2015. You will have received an email from me in the last 24 hours detailing why a Pottery Parish Council want the site included in the local plan. I suspect almost everyone else who speaks to you today will be requesting the reverse. Briefly, let me give you 4 reasons. First, the community supports additional housing similar in number to the growth the parish has seen in the previous 15 years, and that's 26 new properties, which I believe the 2.3-acre site could accommodate over the next 20 years. A pottery has a much cherished primary school, and we need young families in the village if the school is to survive. This contrasts with Dunkerswell, which has no school, but has sites included in your local plan. Second, the role and function of settlements report considered by your committee in July 2021 shows a pottery to be a very slightly larger and more active parish than Broadhembury Parish, but sites in Broadhembury are currently included in your plan, whilst the pottery site is not. Thirdly, the fact that a pottery only has a part-time post office 1 day per week, whilst Broadhembury has a shop and post office, seems to be the only reason the pottery site was removed, but the report does not take into account that the neighbouring village of Churchingford which is in Somerset, has a very active community shop, coffee shop and post office just a couple of miles away, supported by a Pottery residents. Fourth, whilst residents of Broadhembury remain dependent on broadband delivered over copper wires, all three villages in a Pottery are fortunate in having access to full fibre ultra-fast gigabit broadband since 2019, which has not only been extensively used during the pandemic, but which also enables our residents to shop online at all the major supermarkets and have their...
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Long.
Thank you. On behalf of the Pottery Parish Council, I request that you again include the 2.3 acre Pottery housing site in your local plan 2020 to 2040. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Long. Very persuasive. Okay, so we have a statement, Wendy, from Councillor Brown as well on the same subject.
Yes, that's correct. He couldn't make the meeting, so he's asked me to read the following statement out. Our Pottery has a field in the middle of the village opposite the village hall, which is just over 2 acres. The Parish Council would like to see development for the benefit of the village and its residents. We all know the planning system is against the creation of new homes in the countryside, especially where it is classed as unsustainable. Our Pottery is not that big type of village. In a recent appeal decision, the inspector stated, in allowing development 1 mile outside the village, paragraph 78 of the National Planning Policy Framework, saying that rural housing should be located where it will enhance and maintain the vitality of rural communities. In this regard, a small range of facilities and services, including a primary school, exists in the village. It is reasonable to consider that these facilities and services would see use by future occupants of the proposed development. This could help to sustain these facilities and services, benefiting the broader rural community. Villages have only survived through organic growth. This village should be allowed organic growth in its centre to retain the lifeblood in need to flourish and prosper. It has the facilities, the school, and a good regular bus service. End of statement.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on then to Mr. Bragg, who is a West Hill resident, and I believe he's going to attempt to share a PowerPoint. Sorry, Councillor Key, you've got your hand up.
I would like to have spoken on the Pottery one as well, as I'm the ward member and also a parish councillor and live in the parish.
Okay, I don't think there's any reason why you can't. Mrs. Shaw, is there any procedural reason why Councillor Key shouldn't speak at this point?
No, it is at your discretion, Chair. However, Councillor Key hadn't registered to speak, and the public speaking section is quite full. So if he wishes to speak, I would suggest we encourage him to be brief and not to repeat, that's all.
Okay, Councillor Key, I think our Pottery isn't on our agenda, presumably as a result of the submissions we've heard. So there won't be another opportunity. So I think Councillor Key will let you speak now.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I endorse everything that the two previous speakers have actually said, because I mean, I've lived in a Pottery now for 46 years, and it is grown into a very thriving village. As you've heard, unfortunately, we don't have a shop, but a thriving school, a thriving church, brand new playing fields facilities that were adopted probably about sort of between 5 and 10 years ago. So consequently, we've had new houses built, both for affordable housing and private housing. And therefore, I mean, this is why we would like this site included in there, which would enable the village to increase and also keep the school going and make the village thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your brevity, Councillor Key. Okay, and looks as though we've moved on to Mr. Bragg seamlessly.
Okay, thanks, Chair and Committee. I'm negative to any development in the area described as West 01 in West Hill, and I'm going to talk off the attached PowerPoint, which you've got in front of you. You can see the north orientation here, and here's the B3180 road running north-south next to it. I have to say the icons relate to a TPO, which roughly approximates to West 01. And basically last year, when the bulldozers moved in, without the early intervention of councillors Jess Bailey, Della Cannings and the local residents, this area by now could have been denuded. The area not only offers a pleasant view from the B3180, but it's an effective noise barrier as well. The adjoining footpath that you can see, number 5, is used regularly by local residents for their daily exercise. And this area and its accompanying trees not only contribute and have a special relationship with the local landscape, but it contributes to the character and appearance of West Hill. West 1 is a home to many species of wildlife. Hearing owls and sightings of buzzards and bats is common. Mr. Robin Offer, your tree officer, noted the presence of fallow deer when he came to visit on a site visit. So any developments here is going to cut into this very pleasant and a pleasant amenity, which all of us enjoy. I want to mention a couple of items not included on the site assessment. Number 1, there's an attenuation tank which sits astride the High Point Ordnance Survey contour line. We've had some flooding in neighbouring gardens recently, so any increased flood water could be a consequence of disturbing this attenuation tank. Second thing is West 1 is on a higher level than the surrounding houses. So any new properties would compromise neighbours' privacy by overlooking. The report to the committee does mention the national policy on limiting the need for travel. So again, a couple of items on this report. In paragraph 7.69, it indicates West Hill facilities include shops, plural. Sorry, there's only one shop in the village, which is McColl's. They recently went into receivership. They've been taken over by Morrison's, but that's now been referred to the Competition and Markets Authority. So there's no guarantee that we're going to get a shop. No shop equals more and costly travel. Point 7.7 and point 7.71 on your report indicate that West Hill has,
Mr. Bragg.
thank you, an older population than East Devon average, and 2/3 of workers commutes. Facts are we have a lack of open spaces, lack of leisure facilities, no cafes, no pubs, and very, very limited public transport. So again, people will be forced to travel. There's been no increase in employment locally. So again, anybody who comes here will be forced to travel. So finally, I do believe that as a committee, you're interested not just in people as statistics, but people and their well-being. So if that's the case, I hope you see that development of this site is not warranted. These guys can't talk, but they would say the same again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bragg. A nice picture to end on.
Thank you.
Okay, Wendy. So we need to stop screen sharing. There we are. Okay, and now we've got Councillor Rob Hatton. Was he in the meeting? Oh, yep, I see him. Speaking on behalf of Bishop's Clyst Parish Council. Go ahead, Councillor Hatton, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee on behalf of Bishop's Clyst Parish Council about Clyst St Mary. Local facilities in Clyst St Mary are limited. The village is only served by a half-hourly bus service to Exeter or Sidmouth and Honiton. We've no doctor's surgery. Residents have to use surgeries in Pinhoe, Topsham or Woodbury, none of which are easily reachable by public transport. In 2018, the Green Spire development added 80 houses to the existing 350 within the built-up area boundary, a 23% increase. Plans have been approved for a further 38 houses and 40 apartments, another 18% increase. Now in the local plan draft, we're being asked to take a further increase of 17.7 to 25.1%, one of the largest allocations. And we honestly don't see 25% increase as a fair proportion of the overall target for our community. Because of traffic congestion at peak times, we suffer from rat running through the village to avoid queues on the A376 roundabout, and also traffic using the back lanes from the A30 and Exeter Airport, which exits through the village. This causes delay, congestion and safety issues in the village centre around the shop, school and pub. Many of the listed sites, including South Node 9, would gain access through this area, making the current situation far worse. We've got major recurring problems with sewage flooding, involving raw sewage running down the streets in the lower part of the village, and also surcharging toilets to low-lying houses. South West Water has so far been unable to resolve this problem, and we are concerned a solution must be found before there's any further development in the River Cliff catchment. As noted in the report, we're in the process of reviewing our neighbourhood plan. We've had helpful and constructive discussions with EDDC officers and consulting local residents on the site options. We sincerely hope that the local plan consultation process will retain the flexibility to reflect our findings in the final site allocations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hatton. Okay, we'll move on to a statement from West Hill Parish Council. Wendy, you're going to read that one out, I believe.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. West Hill Parish Council will comment in detail on the draft local plan when it is published, and we have had the chance to listen to our residents' views. However, we would like to make some preliminary comments on the proposed site allocations for West Hill. There were very many sites around West Hill put forward through the HELA process, and we are pleased that officers have excluded the majority as possible site allocations. The preferred site allocations are West Hill 04, 06, and second best site 01. There are problems with all of these sites. Site 04, highways access to this site would presumably be from Windmill Lane. This is narrow and unlit and totally unsuitable for the volume of traffic that would come from the development. The walking route to the village centre and facilities is around 1 kilometre and along mostly unlit roads and no footway. The site is on some of the highest ground in West Hill, and development is likely to breach the skyline and therefore have a significant landscape impact. Sites 04 and 06. Both of these sites are on land that has many springs and natural aquifers. There are problems with surface water runoff and flooding, which has already caused problems to residents in surrounding streets. Site 01, the proposed second best allocation. This is a site with a high landscape value and many TPO'd trees. The current woodland acts as a buffer between the recent development at Hayes End and the busy B3180 and is a haven for wildlife. The Parish Council also have concerns about the lack of infrastructure. We share many facilities with Ottery St Mary, and the proposed development there, which is excessive, will place even more strain on services. There are particular problems with primary and secondary school capacities, medical services at the Coleridge Medical Centre, and inadequate bus services. For West Hill itself, we have a severe lack of public open space and community facilities and a single shop. 2/3 of workers commute out to work. These factors make West Hill less sustainable than many other communities, and yet we are proposed to have 1.9 growth, far more than many major towns such as Exmouth, Honiton and Sidmouth, and far more than many other Tier 4 villages, a significant number of which have 0 preferred site for allocation. End of statement.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we now have a statement from Mike Drew on behalf of the trustees of Broadhembury Estate, and Sarah, I believe you're going to read that one out.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. In response to your draft report concerning Broadhembury Village and considering the site opposite the Memorial Hall, I would like to comment as to why it is not appropriate for development. The infrastructure supporting Broadhenbury Village is at a capacity where it should not be subjected to the extra burden of increased traffic and human waste disposal. The roads supporting the village are inadequate, persistently damaged by flooding, the increased volume of traffic and size of agricultural vehicles. They are becoming more dangerous for pedestrians. The sewage pumping station is now running beyond full capacity with frequent overflows of sewage and would certainly not benefit from the additional waste from another 10 dwellings. Flooding in the village is on the increase due to the speed and volume of the water that passes through the valley catchment area. Poor soil percolation properties and the speed of runoff from this site already contribute to flooding, and this would be exacerbated by any hard landscaping consistent with development. The river tail at the lower end of the village struggles to cope with the volume of water that passes through when there is wet weather. Last year, flooding here rendered several properties uninhabitable, one of which took 7 months to repair. The site is not well screened and is elevated from the road. This in turn makes it visible along the main entrance to the village, from the village hall and from the northwest and west of the village. Development would compromise the vista towards the Grade 1 listed church along the entrance to the village. As has rightly been acknowledged, Broadhenbury Village is a heritage asset, a concentration of over 20 medieval and late medieval dwellings, and a designated conservation area in the area of outstanding natural beauty. The site would compromise the setting of this heritage asset as it overlooks 2 Grade 2 listed buildings and their curtilage, one of these being the pub and its public garden. Transversely, an important vista from the conservation area out into open countryside would be lost if there were to be any development here. The village and its vibrant surrounding wildlife benefit greatly from dark skies, and the land adjoining the site is host to, amongst others, rare Barber-style bats, which are sensitive to light pollution. To lose this special benefit would be a tragedy. To judge which tier Broadhenbury should come under by what services it provides in comparison to other settlements does not address how unique it is, and it should really be looked at in a different light. Would it not be better to look outwards rather than inwards for potential development sites, if any? And would it not be in the interests of the environment, both natural and built, to favour brownfield sites, and in particular, acknowledging Part Q permitted developments in your quest for delivering the number of houses required in the parish over the lifespan of the new local plan? Wherever any new dwellings are built within the parish, the inhabitants will, at any event, need to rely on private transport for work and domestic matters, so it makes no odds as to how close they are to local services. The trustees...
3 minutes, Chair.
Should I continue, Chair?
Is there much more to go, Sarah?
There's 3 more paragraphs.
Well, I guess, yeah, we better hear the whole thing, hadn't we?
Thank you. The trustees of Broadhenbury Estate support the provision of affordable housing for local people, but without the need for disproportionate development, and offered to donate a plot of land to this end. However, it met with its challenges, mainly the difficulty in reconciling something that overlooked heritage assets and the vocal lack of community support. The plan was rejected, so the idea was abandoned. It is therefore fair and appropriate to mention that in 2016, the community were polled by the Parish Council as to whether they would support any development on the site opposite the Memorial Hall. A significant majority said they would not, the reasons mirroring the above mentioned. In conclusion, to increase the number of dwellings with new builds so close to the heart of Broadhenbury Village for the sake of achieving housing targets is not a good idea. It would not only place an unacceptable strain on key utilities, but it would also threaten a fragile ecological environment and irretrievably damage the unique built nature of this place that currently attracts walkers, cyclists, and numerous other visitors, very much to the benefit of the local economy. And that's the end of the statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea if people send in statements if they road test them first, because that was good reading speed, and so it might be a good idea if they check that it will fit in the 3 minutes. We've got another statement to be read out. This is from Ruth Irish, a resident of Bishop's Clyst. So we're back to Bishop's Clyst, and Wendy, you're going to read that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Ruth Irish would like me to read. I'd like to highlight potential perception of what is currently happening regarding Bishop's Clyst proposals and within surrounding parishes. As a resident, it feels as though there is building on every available space, all at the same time. It would be interesting to know what percentage of all of these sites truly offer affordable homes. Is there a coherent overall plan? As you are fully aware, there is a huge site in Topsham which is creeping along in the direction of the Blue Ball. Cranbrook is about to double in size. Pinhoe developments are also extensive and ongoing, a hotel built at Sandy Park and IKEA. As for Clyst St Mary specifically, Green Spire has been established, properties squeezed in behind the old Malsters Arms and Borrington Estates development of Winslade House. DEFRA building and surrounding grounds is incomplete. Existing services such as healthcare and schooling will surely be put further under pressure. During evenings, a bus service is available During evenings, a bus service is available only every 1.5 hours. Traffic and parking is a real issue. I have noticed that the residents of the recently renovated cottages opposite the shop have put up signs requesting consideration for the residential area in terms of noise and disturbance. Delivery vans visiting the village and shop are continuous throughout the day. Exiting the roundabout in the mornings can be very tricky due to the volume of traffic to and from Sidmouth, Exmouth and Exeter, let alone the short cutting from the airport direction along Bishop's Court Lane and into the village along Frog Lane. End of statement.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, so that ends the public speakers. I'd like to thank them for their statements and assure you that members will take those into consideration. I think it's important that we hear from the public and from parish councils at these meetings. So Sarah, you're going to remove Councillor Long, Mr. Bragg and Councillor Hatton to the lobby.
Yes, I will do. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just remind you, Councillor Parr has had her hand up throughout the public speaking section.
She has. Sorry, Councillor Parr, I did notice that earlier, but we wanted to get through the public speakers. Okay, did you have something you wish to add?
I just want to check, Chairman, that you will be taking non-committee members when locations come up, because I do want to speak on Collerton sites.
If they're in the agenda, then yes, I'll make sure I do that.
Okay,
but
great.
Remind
Thank
me
you very
if
much.
I don't. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So we move on to apologies, and well, we did have apologies from Councillor Blakey, but he's here, so that's good. So Wendy, what other apologies do we have?
Yes, we've got Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Moulding, Councillor Rylance, and Councillor Bailey will be here, but she will arrive a little bit later.
Thank you very much. And I see our chair has now arrived, actually. So just in time for the declarations of interest, Councillor Arnott. Wendy, I will hand over to you, and I need to remind members, when your name is called, mindful of the new code of conduct, please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, what exactly the interest is, and the type of interest you're declaring. Okay, so are there any councillors who wish to declare an interest that may affect their ability to remain in the meeting?
Okay, shall I do it by roll call?
I think that would be a good idea. And we need to include non-committee members as well, don't we?
Yes, I'll do that at the end of the committee members one.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so if I can start with Chair, Councillor Arnott.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair, Councillor Davey.
None, thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Blakey.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yes. First, I'm not too worried about it because it's an ORI, but nevertheless, Mrs. Shaw tells me, as my parish councillor for Bishop's Cliff Parish Council, obviously there is an interest there, but I don't believe it relates to anything. I'm all worried, and I think I'm going to have to declare an effects and prejudicial NRI, and I have to elaborate that a tiny bit because obviously I own a convenience store in our village of Bishop's Cliff or Cliff St Mary in the Bishop's Cliff parish. And in theory, any new development in my local area, they could choose to use me. So the reality is they'll probably use Waitrose, Sainsbury's or someone else. But nevertheless, there is a thing there. So I'm going to declare it an effects and prejudicial NRI. And I hope I can speak on Cliff St Mary at some point and then leave, if you get my meaning. I need to also address the fact that I come with fairly strong views, but I'm not predetermined. Well, most strong views are echoing what Councillor Rob Hatton, our chairman of our parish council, said earlier. I am, at present, have severe concerns about any of the development in our village for all the reasons spoken about. But as I say, everyone, hopefully, that knows me, I will take all material facts as they go on and everything else and go from there. So I think that's what I'm going to need to say and declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Ingham.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
None, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger.
None, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
None to declare, Wendy. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
None that I'm aware of, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I've covered all the committee members. I can see we have other members in the meeting. If you do have a declaration you think you need to declare for this meeting, if you could just raise your electronic hand, please. I have no hands raised, so back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Shall I hand over to Councillor Arnott at this point? He's gone very quiet.
I'm very happy, Ollie, if you're good enough to stay in the chair until the first break, if that's okay.
Yes, yeah, absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 4 is matters of urgency and there are none to discuss. Agenda item 5 is confidential and exempt items and there are none of those either. So agenda item 6, presentations for invited developers and agents promoting major sites at tier 3 and 4 settlements which are recommended for allocation or as second choice sites for allocation by officers. A list of those presenters can be found on pages 3 and 4 of the agenda. So we're going to start with a tier 3 settlement, Broadclist, and we have 5 minutes for these, and we should have Alex Bullock, who is presenting land west of Wimple Road, Broadclist, on behalf of LVA. And we have that there. Good.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Alex Bullock and I'm the head of planning at Land Value Alliances. LVA is an experienced land promoter with a proven track record of delivering development sites across the southwest. For this project, we will be supported by a consultant team led by Grassroots Planning. Next slide, please. The emerging East Devon local plan envisages an overall housing need of 18,360 dwellings, with Broadcliff identified by the emerging plan as a sustainable development location. The site is identified as a preferred option by emerging Strategic Policy 22 for residential development of around 160 dwellings. Next slide, please. This slide shows the site relative to the wider settlement of Broadcliff and highlights its proximity to some of the services and facilities, but is provided to give some context in relation to where the site is located. Next slide, please. Looking at the site in more detail, it is circa 12 hectares in size and benefits from large frontage onto Wimpole Road. As you can see, the site is bisected by a public right-of-way, which connects between Tower End through to opposite the New Inn. Land is relatively flat with limited features beyond the boundary hedgerows. Next slide, please. As part of our early analysis, we look at the form of the settlement together with its facilities, as well as site constraints and opportunities. As you can see from the extract, the site is subject of only limited constraints, which include a small area of flood zone 2 adjacent to the New Inn, boundary hedgerows, and a small number of neighbours, including listed properties on the eastern boundary. Next slide, please. Move on one again, please. If we on this slide, this shows the illustrative master plan. This is our current thinking, which shows indicatively 160 dwellings, consistent with the draft wording, and a small area of employment land adjacent to the existing agricultural buildings in the bottom right-hand corner. We propose an element of self-build plots adjacent to the New Inn, alongside the potential for community sports pitches, significant areas of public open space, including community parkland. We propose access will be taken from Wimpole Road, and the existing public right-of-way will be retained along with the majority of existing hedgerows. As a result of this sensitive approach, together with the public open space provision, we expect to be able to achieve a biodiversity net gain figure well in excess of national requirements. Next slide, please. We are continuing to develop our technical evidence base, which includes ecological surveys which are already underway with no significant issues identified. Alongside ecology work, we're looking in further detail at the access arrangements. As this slide demonstrates, further technical work in respect of drainage, landscape, heritage and noise are also planned. If we go on to the next slide, please, and the next one. This site is ideally located relative to the range of key services and facilities. This includes 2 schools, both primary and secondary, a convenience store, and a GP surgery and pharmacy. All of these facilities are within acceptable walking distances and broadly a 5 to 10 minute walk. There are further facilities with accessible distances from the site. In addition, the village is served by a public transport service that runs broadly every 20 minutes through to Exeter. Next slide, please. The proposals would deliver, importantly, new market and affordable housing in a highly accessible and sustainable location, where occupiers can meet a significant proportion of their daily needs without being dependent on a car. Our proposals include a proportion of self-built plots, significant provision of public open space, including a dedicated sports field, links through to the existing public right-of-way network to facilitate access to key services and facilities. Finally, an intention through a landscape and ecological-led approach to deliver biodiversity net gain in excess of national requirements. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, we'll be working up our evidence base within the remainder of this year. We'll be looking to engage with officers of East Devon alongside a public consultation exercise, either before the end of this year or the first part of 2023. We therefore hope to be able to make an application during the course of next year. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Bullock? Nope, doesn't look like it. So we'll move on to another one in Broadcliff. This is from Richard Jackson of the National Trust, presenting on land to the east of Town End and north of Loudons. So that, I think, is quite close to the previous one.
Yes, it is. It's the little brother, I suppose, of what we've just seen. Is that okay? Can you see my screen? Can I just check that, please?
We can, thank you, Richard.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, so I'm Richard Jackson, Senior Estate Manager for the National Trust based at Killerton. And I'll whiz through this, but just a very quick bit of background for those that don't know the Killerton estate, but it's a National Trust estate comprising of just over 6,000 acres of contiguous land, made up of 18 farms, about 260 residential dwellings, 1,000 acres of woodland, and obviously a major visitor attraction. A large proportion of the modern housing within Broadclist was developed on National Trust owned land in the 1980s and 1990s. That land was held as investment land, which is obviously quite different to most of our National Trust land ownership. The land to the east of Townend is indicated by the red arrow on that plan. Zooming into a little bit more detail, the piece of land there was part of the 1940s bequest to the National Trust, and through the National Trust Act, we are able to declare land as something called inalienable, which basically means that we're not able to part with the freehold possession of it. This section of land highlighted purple, along with a few others across the estate, are not declared. So they are in fact held as investment land on the assumption that at some future point their capital value will be realised to help us to fund and undertake our other charitable purpose duties. The land to the east of Townend is currently let on a farm business tenancy, and it's approximately 1 hectare in size. EDDC have conducted a site assessment, and the interim findings of that assessment are in your pack that accompanied the agenda today. So I'm not going to go over those points, other than to say that the National Trust are in agreement with the findings. And as I say, we don't need to go over those. But I suppose the key points to note regarding the context of the site is that it's really well related in terms of how it sits with the built-out areas of Broadclist, and it follows a natural continuation of the village edge. The road at Townend has a linear alignment, so it does provide the opportunity for safe vehicular access. In terms of the background for the proposed residential development of the site, the National Trust submitted the site into the Broadclist neighbourhood planning call for sites back in 2017. As part of that, the neighbourhood plan steering group commissioned an ACOM report where they undertook an independent and objective assessment of the suitability of all the sites put forward, including this site. And all of the findings can be found within that report, which is on the Broadclist neighbourhood plan website. The report was completed in 2019, and the recommendation was that this site could provide could be potentially appropriate for taking forward through that process for up to 24 dwellings, taking into account the development would fit and how it would fit with the existing built context of the village, with minor visual impacts, and it also has very good accessibility to services. The recommendation highlighted that high quality design and layout would be required, having regards to the village setting, and that access would need to be from Townend. In 2020, the National Trust was informed by the neighbourhood planning process that it wouldn't be taking this site forward, despite the recommendations set out in the ACOM report, as it didn't receive at the time the majority of the public vote that they put forward as a benchmark within the neighbourhood planning process. The concerns primarily related to potential traffic and access impacts of the development. The National Trust acknowledges and agrees with the assessments that were completed by EDDC in respect of the site, which again you can find in Appendix 2 to your papers, which selects this as a preferred site which should be allocated in the local plan. It is noted that the site would be subject to a final detailed scheme and proportionate mitigation. The National Trust considers that the findings of the ACOM report commissioned by Broadclist Parish Council remain relevant, and the National Trust supports the recommendation for high quality design. The National Trust has its own internal design principles which we follow, and this is consistent with the ACOM recommendation. Whilst the site has not been taken forward in the neighbourhood plan, the process of submitting the site for consideration has been useful and helped the National Trust to understand the concerns of the local community with regard to the potential traffic and access impacts of the development. Concerns regarding the historic environment, visual impact and density were also cited. It's considered that these concerns can be addressed through a suitably designed scheme and through a suitable location for vehicular access from town end being determined. The National Trust consider that this is a suitable site for the development in a sustainable location and will provide a logical continuation of the village. The allocation of the site is supported by site assessments completed by EDDC and ACOM, and the site is subject to few constraints. The use of the site for residential purposes would fulfill the wishes of the donor of the land to be used for the development to support local society, following on from the residential development of other alienable land within Broadcliff, which took place in the 80s and 90s. I hope that the additional information that's been presented today is useful to you, and I'd be happy to hear any comments and try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I always find it ironic that we attempt to cite development in areas that are considered sustainable, and yet the first complaint we hear from local residents is always about the increase in traffic that it'll generate. So I don't know quite how we square that one. Anyway, we will move on now to Lympstone, and we're going to hear from Nick. Yep.
Questions. Members
Sorry.
have questions.
Yeah. I didn't ask if anybody had any questions. I can't see any hands up. So I'm assuming nobody has any questions on that site. Okay, thanks for the reminder, Wendy. So we will now move on to Lympstone, and we have Nick Yeo from the 3 West Group presenting land to the west of Strawberry Hill. We've got 3 sites in Lympstone to look at, so this is the first. As land to the west of Strawberry Hill, Glebelands, Lympstone. Okay, when you're ready.
Nick, I've made you co-host if you want to share your screen.
Okay. Brilliant. Can you, Wendy, can you confirm if you got my presentation slide on your screen?
We've got it.
I can
Thank
see,
you.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name's Nick Yeo. I'm the Land and Planning Director of 3 West Group. We're a local SME house builder based in Woodbury. Just as a brief introduction to us, as some of you may not be aware of us before, we're currently building on a site in Exmouth, where, as I say, we are a local company and we are using local trades and undertaking our own construction. We wish to grow our business with a focus on building quality new homes for all sectors of the market. We want to establish ourselves as a meaningful contributor to housing delivery in East Devon. We intend to utilise our existing links with local labour force to deliver future schemes, hopefully including the site in Lympstone, growing our business and securing local jobs. We've recently gained control of this piece of land in Lympstone since it was identified as one of the preferred emerging local plan sites. The site itself was identified as the best performing potential site as part of the local plan process, the only site to achieve a rating of 5 within the settlement. It's bordered to the north and south by existing development and consented development, and on the east and west by existing roads. It represents a logical extension to the settlement edge. So let me just bring my slides forwards. The site has a relatively strong urban characteristic. Within the site, I've sort of taken some photos from different angles within the site that obviously show it relates well to the existing settlement edge. The development proposals, which we are at an early stage of evolving, would include the retention of the key hedgerows within the site, which is predominantly this one here with a number of mature trees, as well as retaining a number of the mature trees that are along the hedgerows against the roads. The site represents a logical rounding off to the settlement edge, and as I say, is contained within the roads and existing development boundary. Sorry, the existing built form of the settlement. The development proposed would respond well to site constraints and would include, like I say, retain the hedgerows and have a positive biodiversity net gain. We would look to bring forward a scheme that reflects the draft allocation numbers. We've got ongoing pre-application discussions with highways relating to the appropriate points of access into the site and to secure appropriate pedestrian linkages. There's been pre-app discussions with planning officers relating to proposals for the site. We are targeting a planning submission during 2023 with ecological surveys completed and other supporting information and surveys being obtained at the moment. It is Three West's intention that if we were to obtain planning permission for the site, that we ourselves would deliver the scheme and would do so promptly following the grant of planning permission. That's the end of my presentation, and we'd be grateful to, or be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you very much, Nick. If you can stop screen sharing, I'll be able to see if anybody has any questions. But just while you're doing that, you said you're developing a site in Exmouth. Could I ask where that is?
That's at Goodmore's Farm.
Ah, right. Okay, thank you. That's quite a sizable site then. Okay.
Yes, it is. Have I stopped screen sharing? Can I just check?
You have, yes, you have. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lawrence, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that seems to come to light in most of these applications for the smaller sites is a genuine concern in villages for the lack of affordable housing. I attended a meeting yesterday where further development at Cranbrook is taking place, and they're going to be putting in 15% affordable housing. Now, this does very little for smaller villages where they're being asked to take large quantities of houses, where the housing is obviously for the constructor's point of view, has got to be 4 and 5 bedroom houses and make loads of money and everything else. What villages need in order to prosper and go further forward is affordable housing. We need youngsters to stay in villages. We need work for youngsters to stay in villages and populate the schools and the local shops and all the rest of the things that go with it. And it really does worry me that we're looking at bringing in lots of people from outside. All right, they contribute to the well-being of villages as well, but we're driving out youngsters from our villages, and there's nowhere for them to live. And I was going to ask the speaker, and I'm not getting at him particularly. I was going to ask the speaker what plans they had for affordable housing, what proportion they're looking at, if that's possible. Thank you.
Well, we're obviously waiting for clarification as the plan process emerges as to what the affordable housing policy will be, and our expectation is to deliver affordable housing in line with East Devon's policies. I mean, going back to your point in terms of the mix of housing for the site, we are actually proposing a range of housing. We've acknowledged comments that are contained within the neighbourhood plan that it might be nice to have some housing for older people. We've, at the same time, we need to be mindful to the allocation numbers. So we are looking to include a small number of bungalows within the scheme for older people. But at the same time, we need to be mindful to the fact that they are very land hungry, and to comply with the allocation numbers, they can't all be bungalows. But we are considerate to that. We will be providing affordable housing. We will be providing smaller housing as well as bungalows as well. So hopefully that goes some way, at least to answering your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wasn't getting at you in particular. I just wanted to make the point that this is what we need.
Absolutely understood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Okay, we'll move on to the next presentation then. This is David Seaton, who is of PCL Planning, presenting land off Grange Close, Limpston, And we've got that on our screens now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very brief because it's a very small site. You can see from the overhead shot there, this is what in the old days I think we would have all referred to as a sensible piece of rounding off. The site isn't part of the agricultural fields to the northeast. It's just basically a remnant which has existing development on two sides. It doesn't really perform a positive function at the moment, and it's just a simple piece of rounding off. Wendy, if I could just ask you to go on 2 slides forward, which just shows how the site could be developed, retaining the existing trees. I really haven't got a lot more to add to that, so short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many houses does that actually represent?
One. It says 6.
Just one. Well, it looks like one on the plan. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay, we'll move on to Edwards Lewis, Acorn Property Group, presenting on Little Paddocks, 22 Underhill Crescent, Lympstone as well.
Good morning. So I'm going to be presenting on behalf of Acorn. Wendy, do you want me to share this one?
I've made you co-host,
Okay.
so when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Wendy. Do you mind sharing your end?
No, okay, just bear with me.
Is that
I'll
okay?
just pull it up. Yeah.
In the meantime, Chair, could we ask the party that's attending the meeting with the label iPad 4 if they could please identify themselves whilst we wait for that to come up?
That would be a very good idea. iPad 4, can you just identify yourself, and Wendy can rename you if necessary. Okay, we've got that on our screen now anyway, so we'll come back to iPad 4 in a minute.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Wendy. Right, so morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. Again, a fairly short presentation, but to give a bit of a background of where we are with this. So my name is Sam Blight. I am the development manager and architect at Acorn Property Group. So Acorn Property Group would be the developer on this site. You may recognise our name because it's been involved in the redevelopment of the Royal College site in Exmouth. So shows a bit of, sort of pedigree there on delivering high quality houses within East Devon. Generally, our approach is totally bespoke. We're sort of high quality bespoke residential led housing developer. If you could pop onto the next slide, please. So again, a couple of images of what we've done locally. We're, based in the southwest. I'm based in Exeter. And as I say, we are building in Exeter and in East Devon at the moment.
Oh, sorry, do you want me to move?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Has that moved? Sorry.
It's not moved, no.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Oh, that's it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the detailed planning policy or planning context because you're well informed of that. But what I wanted to do is just set out the merits of allocation of this site. So as you can see, outlined in red there, The site is the sort of fairly level field to the rear of 22 Underhill Crescent and inclusive of the house itself. It has 2 vehicular accesses into the site. Both are suitable for private drives in terms of their current widths, but then they could be upgraded to adoptable standards. It's a very sustainable location, as you can see. Walking distance to amenities. It's accessible to the railway line and cycle footpath along the estuary. Looking at it and looking at the surrounding context, it's got existing residential development and approved development for housing to the north, east, and the west of the site, which is really framing this as an infill site. The southern boundary itself is robust. It's an existing Devon hedge bank. It's a very sort of sensible infill of that edge of the Limpston settlement there. It is within the Green Wedge, but it's outside the coastal protection designation area. And if you move on to the next slide, we can see how we might address some of those constraints. I think it's worth saying from the beginning that looking at the site initially and doing our analysis and due diligence, there are fairly little constraints on this site really, and those constraints that do exist can be managed by sensitive design. And I think from the first instance, we agree with the principles of what's been outlined by East Devon in terms of suitability of allocation and for up to 14 dwellings on this site. As I say, it's in the Green Wedge, but the recent approved dwelling to the west identified that any infill in this area would have negligible impact on that Green Wedge. It's unusually unoverlooked and very private actually within the field itself. And again, with some sensitive bespoke design, which someone like us as Acorn, who deliver bespoke housing, could quite easily manage through considered design. I mentioned previously, but worth mentioning again, that there are 2 access points, and they could be adapted to suit the amount of dwellings that would come out of the detailed design work. As I say, up to 14. And then if you move on to the next slide. So very early days, but looking at taking all those constraints and starting to understand how this site might shape up. So at the moment, we're looking at probably utilising both access points, vehicular access points, but that could change. And I think it'd be wrong to be saying that we know exactly what we're doing with this site at the moment, because we would like to go through the proper design process, engage locally, and also engage and collaborate with the local authority as well to get a suitable scheme for this site. I think that's probably all we can say really at this moment. But I mean, in conclusion, it seems from a developer's perspective, from looking at the context, it's a very suitable site for residential development, and it should be fairly straightforward to deliver, subject to the right design response, which we feel like we can deliver. Thank you. That was all I was going to say really, and obviously welcome any questions.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Don't think we have any hands up to ask any questions. It's quite close to the railway line, isn't it? But I suppose it's far enough away for that not to be an issue for you. I think there's another property in between, isn't there?
There is,
okay.
Yeah.
Yep, we've got no other questions, so we'll move on to David Seaton from PCL Planning. This is land off Grange Close, Limpston.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just going through.
Chair, I think you've already heard that presentation.
Yeah, we're on tier 4 now, Chardstock. It's Stephen Bainbridge.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've gone backwards. Yeah.
Come on, Chair. Come on. Wake up. Wake up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perhaps I nodded off there. Okay. So we have Stephen Bainbridge, Greenslades, Taylor Hunt presenting for Land off Greenland Chardstock.
Morning, members. Hopefully you don't nod off doing this one. Thank you for inviting me to speak today on behalf of my clients who are Strongbox. Wendy, do you mind if I present just so I can move at a rhythm that I'm comfortable with? Is that okay?
Of course. Bear with me. Let me just make you a co-host. There we go. You can share your screen now.
Okay. If I go to share screen. And okay.
Yeah, we've got that, Stephen. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, one minor correction is that it's the R4 site, but it's land off Green Lane rather than land off Greenland Chardstock. As I said before, this is on behalf of Strongbox. You can see the site there marked crudely at this stage just with a red circle showing the situation of the site relative to Chardstock. You can see the site a little bit better here, outlined in red. You should be able to to make out the school just at the bottom of the screen there. The site is well connected to the village. So this is the plan that we submitted as part of the HELA or the call for sites. Here is the map that officers prepared, which shows the Chardstock sites, Char 4 being the green site there on the eastern boundary of the village. And I don't know whether you can make out all of the box there, whether you've got the same faces that I have on the right hand side of the screen, but this is the comments that were provided by officers. The site was given a housing capacity of 30 dwellings, which was rounded down from the initial number that we suggested, which was 62. The allocation suitability was 5 out of 6, and thank you very much for making it your preferred option to allocate. The site is flat, it is well located to the village edge rather, and quite importantly, it's not within the area of outstanding natural beauty, which is quite a challenge because most of the village is. Just a little bit about Strongbox. So they've instructed Greenslade Taylor Hunt to provide this presentation, and they'll shortly be under option on the site. That's very, very close now. They will be carrying out further feasibility work and working with the council, we hope, if you'll allow us to promote this site to a successful allocation and determination. Strongbox Homes are a privately owned Taunton-based house builder, building sites across the southwest. The company is firmly rooted in the West Country and develops sites across the region. They currently build 200 homes a year and focus on creating bespoke sites which reflect their local surroundings and sit in harmony with the surrounding landscape, which is a key point here. Strongbox have previously completed a number of schemes in East Devon, and in recent years, this includes arts and crafts style homes in West Hill, 36 bungalows in West Clyst. These schemes help to demonstrate the breadth that Strongbox products have and helps to set them apart from other developers. The company looks to engage with local communities and from the outset firmly believe in listening and responding to their views. Strongbox are currently building 20 Art Deco influenced homes in Stoke Fleming and have just completed a development in Topsham, including a thatched property, and further sites they're progressing in Devon. Further afield, they're developing 109 homes in Everstowe on the site of an old cheese factory, 38 homes in Wedmore, 110 homes in Cribbs Causeway, and 16 homes in a village called Stoke-sub-Hamden. So update for members. So why we're here. So we have carried out some early ecological survey work, and that's shown that continue to do some more survey work, but no issues have been identified that would preclude development. We're going to continue doing that work to make sure that development isn't delayed. We remain confident as a result of that early work that we can provide at least the 10% biodiversity net gain on the site, as well as other environmental benefits. As I mentioned before, officers suggested reducing the number of units that was initially proposed from 62 down to 30. Some early landscape and master planning work that we've done, and we would be delighted to share with you as it progresses to a suitable state, suggests that the site, we believe, could comfortably accommodate 40 dwellings, and that would also leave a soft and green edge to the east of the site. So this is, as I said before, the site appraisal that officers provided. We've prepared sort of our suggestion, which would be to increase with respect the suitability rating to a 6, because there's now greater comfort over the deliverability of the site, thanks to Strongbox's involvement and some of the early feasibility work that we've done. That is the end of my presentation, members. Thank you for listening to me. We hope that you'll continue to see this as your preferred option site, and I'd be glad to take any questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I can't see any hands up, but I will just ask one. I mean, obviously, you've got quite a large piece of land there, and you reckon you can get 40 on there. The officers have reckoned 30. Would it be viable with 30, and would you be able to provide any affordable housing with Councillor Lawrence's comments in mind?
Yeah, a key point to raise, and something that the members are absolutely astute to pick up very early on. Having been involved in local plan preparation myself, it's difficult to hit the number on the head of the exact proportion of affordable housing that we provided, but Strongbox's appetite is absolutely to provide the level of affordable housing on site that your officers believe is acceptable. That's 30 units. If that number is the product of a sound master planning and landscape-led design scheme, or whether it's 40 units. Clearly, our preference would be to make that land work as efficiently as possible for the developer in such a way that sits comfortably within that sensitive landscape. But that's something that we, at this point in time, would suggest should be led, if you work with us, should be led to the conclusion of a proper master planning and landscaping process.
Okay, thank you. And presumably, if you've got quite a large area of land there, you can provide quite a lot of open space for those residents. You would be looking still at retaining the whole site for those purposes, presumably.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The site that was outlined in red is the site. There's no proposal that I'm aware of whatsoever to shrink that site, which means there's opportunities to provide green space to break up the site in suitable areas, as well as providing that soft eastern boundary to sort of assimilate and round off the settlement in an appropriate way.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Well, we'll move on now to Clifton Mary. I think I've got the right place in my script. So we're hearing from Richard Shaw from Savills, presenting on land at Bishop's Court Lane in Clifton Mary.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. Wendy, if you're able to do the slides, please.
Yes, of course. Bear with me. I'll just call it up.
Thank you.
Well done, Wendy. There we go.
Thank you very much. Chairman, Clifton Mary comprises a suitable and sustainable location for an appropriate level of housing focused around the existing village. It's sustainably located close to Exeter, accessible to wider jobs and facilities within a public transport corridor, and on the Clifton Valley Trail initiative with opportunities for cycling. The Dart land ownership is the areas shown red on the right-hand slide there. That's your map on the left with these areas shown as part of South 11. These areas of land comprise suitable and logical locations for a level of development that is proportional in scale with the village, its character and location. Chairman, the Darts, as you probably know, are a well-known local family. Darts Farm is an exemplar of what the family has created for the local area, comprising a multifunctional food, retail, restaurant, leisure and business enterprise, employing many local people, acting as an outlet for a wide range of Devon producers across the county. The Darts Farm approach and operation is very focused on Devon, its people, its producers and the local economy, with the principles of sustainability at its heart. In addition, the housing development by Bloor Homes on the land owned by the Darts at Topsham Road in Exeter, Seabrook Orchards, demonstrates the high quality and character of housing that can be delivered when attention is paid to detail and quality, when a caring landowner retains an interest in achieving the right result. It's been acknowledged by Exeter City Council planners as an outstanding example, representing the creation of a community, not just house building. The scale of that development is, of course, very different from what would be appropriate at St Mary, where the development would be of much smaller scale, of suitable local village character, but the Darts track record of delivering high quality, sustainable and sensitive development responsive to the local community will be applied at St Mary if these sites are supported in the local plan. The South 11 landholding offers an opportunity to deliver a modest level of housing facilities that assist East Devon District to deliver your necessary housing numbers at a location and in a form which the district and parish councils, local residents and the community will be proud to have, compared with other promoters who may not have those local interests and a lasting legacy at heart. South 11 and other options are indicated on that plan. Either or both of the two parcels of land, as you see, they're situated both sides of Bishop's Court Road, north and south, can be readily developed for a residentially led scheme with appropriate supporting facilities. Wendy, if you could pop up the next slide, please. The number, range and type of housing at this stage is entirely flexible and can be tailored to meet identified local needs, but could and should include affordable housing for local people, potentially specialised elderly persons housing or a care home to suit locally identified needs. Density and housing numbers can vary according to the type and range of housing. For example, elderly or care accommodation can comprise smaller dwellings, higher density, whilst affordable housing and family housing will need decent sized gardens and be lower density. The Dart family wish to see high quality, well-designed development with appropriate supporting infrastructure and facilities. They're committed to delivering that positive legacy and style of architecture is envisaged, which draws upon the more positive and traditional local village examples. Wendy, next slide, if you would, please. Some examples are attached here of sensitive village contextual architecture employed elsewhere. Open space and supporting facilities can be provided as required. And Chairman, as you picked out in one of the other slides, there is a lot of land available here under the owner's control for open space and other facilities, commensurate with the number of proposed dwellings, responsive to locally identified requirements for the village. Access is readily available to both development parcels. If we could switch back now to the next slide, please. Sorry, on to the next slide. Access is available from both parcels, north and south from the road. Existing frontage services are available. There are no technical constraints to development. And so the Dart land ownership can be successfully developed either independently and phased as appropriate. Looking more strategically, there is the potential opportunity here to combine future modest scale on South 11 south of Bishop's Court Road. That's the sort of larger chunk heading off to the northeast on the plan there, with land to the south shown as South 03 on that plan. And in that instance, there are new opportunities, additional opportunities presented. The promoters of South 03 have agreed with the County Highway Authority the ability to access direct from the main road. And that starts to raise the opportunity for discussion with your officers and the Highway Authority, the option of a road coming in through South 03 onto South 11 and linking onto Bishop's Court Road. Chairman, that could offer quite a benefit to Cliss St Mary, because at the moment there is traffic congestion, because in peak periods you get rat running going from the roundabout where the green route intersects along Frog Lane and through the village, and people then head off northwards on that lane heading towards the airport and the related employment areas. So there are potential infrastructure and environmental benefits going with that could be achieved here, and we welcome further discussion with your officers on that point. So in conclusion, Chairman, the potential extent of South 11, if all of it were to be developed, it would be 150 homes, but we don't expect that. The owners are very flexible in terms of the quantum of development and wish to arrive at a suitable allocation in collaboration with your officers that delivers the facilities I've mentioned. As you can see, the opportunities are varied and flexible. With a collaborative approach in mind, we'll be pleased to hold that further dialogue. Final slide, Wendy, please. Thank you very much for listening, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. And as I thought we have a couple of questions on this one. Were you here for the public speaking earlier?
I wasn't actually, no.
Okay, right. So you won't have heard those comments. So I've got Councillor Lawrence first on my screen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to check out something with the speaker. It says on our notes that the site has a maximum yield of 162 dwellings. He mentioned 150, but the officers are saying there's no preferred allocation and only a second best choice of 30 homes. Now, if they only build 30 homes, is it a sustainable option as far as development is concerned, or will they have to knock it on the head? Because if they can't build enough houses, it's not going to be economically viable for them.
That's a very fair point. I think the answer, as I hope I explained earlier, is that the landowner is very flexible at this stage. A development of 30 units would logically be on the area to the south of Bishop's Court Road. And as I mentioned, there is ready access on the frontage, services are available, so there are no particular infrastructure requirements of any substance, really. The second part of your question, Councillor, I think would then be what facilities can we deliver with only 30? Clearly we can deliver some open space, we can deliver a mix of housing, and I think with a total of around about 30, then we would deliver the appropriate proportion of affordable housing. And as I mentioned earlier, we're open to suggestions and discussions about local needs for elderly accommodation as well. I think the big difference here is my clients are a landowner. They're not a developer who's been in and bought the site at any kind of fixed expectation. There is flexibility, and they very genuinely wish to produce something which the village will be proud of, because their family wish to be proud of it going forward as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Mike Howe.
Thank you. Mike. I've just got two questions, actually. Well, one question and one statement. The question I need to ask is any of this land used by the Devon County Showground? And I know as a landowner, they could prevent it being used in the future, but currently, or has it in the past, been used by the Devon County Showground for their show?
No, Councillor, it hasn't been used.
That's great. And I suppose the other question is, being as you missed the public speaking earlier, we do have infrastructure problems in Cliss St Mary, and the infrastructure problems is sewage and southwest water. We have a system that is at capacity and regularly floods the bottom of the village with sewage, and also runs into the River Clist at those extreme weather events. So just as a word of warning, there are problems, just as a sideline, shall we say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I could comment on that, Councillor, that's not an unusual situation for we planning consultants to find we have to deal with currently. If there is an existing problem, that actually makes the future solution to it a little bit easier, because it's something that the water company, the drainage authority, has to address anyway. And we could potentially contribute towards the solution.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think we have no more questions on that one, so we'll move on to another Tier 4 site, at Dunkerswell, and we have Alan Brecken, who's presenting on a site at Broomfields, Dunkerswell. Is he in the meeting?
I've just let in someone called Alan, so if we could just, I'm hoping it is Alan Brecken.
Okay. Oh yes, I see him. I've got him down in the corner of my screen.
Welcome to the meeting, Alan. You're on mute at the moment. I'm hoping you are Alan Brecken. If you could just unmute and identify yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Alan, you're currently on mute.
Ah. We've got a picture, but you're still on mute, Alan.
Thank you for that. How's that?
That's better, Alan.
Are you ready for me, or shall I sit out?
No, I think we're ready.
Oh, are you? Sorry. You sure?
Yep, you're next on my list.
All right. I've got 11:30. You're obviously rushing through them. Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning.
Yep.
Good morning.
Yep. We're all here.
Good morning. My presentation is to do with a site in Dunkerswell. Can I just ask whether you've seen the paper that I prepared or the presentation? I just wondering whether you want me to read it all out, or just briefly tell you what it's about, or.
I did forward it to members, Alan, but it would be good if you could just go through it again.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Yes, the site reference, members, is Dunk 05. There are no plans produced at this stage, basically because I think the exercise is to establish some principles involved in the preparation of a new plan. The site concerned is a call for sites. The site concerned is Broomfields, which is considered as a preferred option by your officers as part of the working draft. Purposes of this presentation, it's the only site being put forward in the village, I believe. In terms of the emerging strategy, I was working at East Devon 2014 or 2010 to 2014 when the last plan was being prepared, and a slightly different approach is being in this particular case, because back then on your current plan, 15 of the 42 villages that were assessed were considered sustainable, but the other 27 basically were considered to be unsustainable, making sort of marginalising some of the villages. And I'm really pleased to see that, although Dunkerswell missed out last time, that now, and that was following a small towns and village assessment of the 42 villages. It lost out because it had everything except a primary school. 27 villages lost their boundaries. As I said, they became marginalised. Encouraged now to see that Dunkerswell is being included for development potential. And as your officers say, I believe the opportunity exists to increase self-containment and reduce commuting. Major consideration now in the context of the new plan. The village itself, its inclusion as a service village, population of 1,500, 3 parts. Largest part is a modern housing estate with a range of facilities to the south. It's got a conservation area and employment estate to the northeast. The only real opportunity for new housing, in my view, lies within or adjoining the Highfield housing estate, because of the range of services and facilities that estate offers. It's got a neighbourhood plan made in 2017, written in the context of the whole of Dunkerswell Parish being considered as open countryside. That was a product of the review of the last plan. No defined settlement boundary, new housing limited to exception sites. The neighbourhood plan expressly supported this approach, and the introduction of a settlement boundary would be a key change. Quite likely to bring some tension, I would have thought, between the community and the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. It doesn't identify any sites in the neighbourhood plan and placed emphasis on protecting character and setting of the area because of the A and B landscape location, traditional farming setting. That was understandable and made in concert with the currently adopted local plan. Selecting it as a service village now in the new plan is a positive step in my view, and I'm hoping there won't be the tension that I've just mentioned with the neighbourhood plan, providing any site chosen for its suitability protects the character and setting of the area, and that's considered shortly in the context of this site. Despite being in the AONB, Duncaswell is considered to be a good location for some additional residential development, obviously because of proximity of employment land and local facilities. The HELAA submissions for Duncaswell concluded that additional development could be accommodated without a significant impact on the landscape or existing development. And that's where I think we come into this particular site, sensitively developing Dunk 005. It will achieve that objective in my view. It's obviously noticeable, those of you that know Dunk as well, that a small cluster of housing has been built opposite the site known as Meads Close. And although no plans have been prepared of how this particular site might be developed, we believe that Meads Close provides an example of new housing that could be built on this particular site. The site itself, it's in the AONB, it's a nice level site. Those of you, again, that know it will probably know it as a former football field, not in agricultural use. It's level, it's accessible, it's deliverable. The football pitch is only evidenced by the two dugouts along one side of the site. Square-shaped parcel of grassland, capacity for 36 dwellings, which we believe would be achievable. A low-density scheme of mixed housing, appropriately designed amenity space within the layout, respecting the location of the site in the AONB. We would consider, or we would expect, a mixture of house types comprising single and two-storey dwellings. I think for reasons which are probably apparent if you've seen the site, the single-storey units would be along the western side with adjoining bungalows. Got a range of house sizes, catering for younger residents, families and the elderly, and this is particularly sensitive to the owners of the site. They would like to see add something to the village in terms of housing accommodation. Low number of residents presently working locally, unusual, but exists in none with the large employment site there. The range of house sizes offers higher employment potential. Type and design housing would, as I've already said, take their lead from those in Meads Close opposite. Two historic points of access into the site off its 30-mile-an-hour road frontage. Shown on the Duncaswell sites map, 05, if you've got that, page 144, you'll see that the site has two accesses either end of the ribbon of houses between them. Gated access to the north, and there's a former access into the football pitch to the south between two trees. You can't see much of that right now, but it did exist. Possible in and out arrangement, get vehicles in and out safely. If the site progresses beyond this stage, which obviously the owners hope it will, discussions will take place with the County Highway Authority to secure the safest and most favourable highway arrangements. Substantial trees along the northern and eastern boundaries protected by TPOs, so they obviously remain. They are a constraint, but it's considered that given the size of the site and the position of the trees, any housing scheme will be expected to ensure that they're unaffected by the development. The mature hedgerow boundary along its northern side will soften views into the site from the south, and in combination with the farm access on the other side of the hedge, provide what I consider to be a long-term defensible boundary, preventing any further development. I mean, I understand from my time in planning and particularly working in the Greenbelt that long-term defensible boundaries were an integral part of land use allocation, because it meant that it hasn't happened in Stevenage, unfortunately, where the A1M doesn't appear to have stopped housing on the other side of it. But usually a long-term defensible boundary will prevent or provide a barrier to further development should should that be a concern on the allocation of this site, which I don't think it exists. I think it's be a long-term boundary, and this, in my view, this actually fits into what would be a built-up area boundary were you to put one around Dunkeswell. So Mr. Chairman, that's probably it in terms of selecting Dunkeswell as a service centre village, which I agree with. I think it's a positive step. Site that you're looking at here in Dunkeswell, suitable, available, deliverable, up to 36 houses. We know this is at an early stage, so we haven't been on the drawing board to produce any layouts to put before you. We think that would be premature anyway. And should the site continue to be preferred option and progress, then we'd work with all the relevant officers. That would be the highway authority, your planning officers, your tree officers, and the village generally, hopefully, getting to a point where we've got an agreeable housing development in principle, be accommodated without having significant impact on the landscape or existing development. Thank you for letting me put these points to you, and hope that ultimately that you'll go along with your officers in this particular case and elevate Dunkeswell to a service village, tier 4, I think, and this particular site within that village. Thank you very much. Any questions, of course, happy to answer them to best of my knowledge.
Good. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Lawrence who's going to ask a question, but if I can just ask a quick one. You mentioned vehicle access. Are there any sustainable transport links you could point to? And also, how does this site sit in relation to the industrial estate in Dunkeswell, given that that might well provide employment opportunities?
Well, it is some way away, because the village is distinctly split into 3 significantly different parts, if I could say that. The major part obviously is to the south. Transport routes, I haven't examined them specifically. Maybe someone that knows Dunkeswell a bit better. I live in Honiton and I very rarely visit Dunkeswell. I don't know about transport links, whether they're what the bus services are like. I mean, this, I think, I'm not trying to be cheeky here, but I think this would have been factored in by your officers in doing their sustainability appraisals of the villages that they felt would be suitable for inclusion as service villages. And I would imagine that would include the ability to sustain itself in some respects, because I think it's sort of the point they make about got it early on, and the opportunity to increase self-containment and reduce commuting. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a trek, I would have thought, from this site up to the employment area, but quite doable. I don't think I can say much more than that.
No, well, we'll perhaps deal with those considerations when we get to closer consideration. I meant to say I've found the Dunkeswell allocations, by the way, on page 69, and we'll also of the agenda, and there's also a more detailed look at that site further on, but I haven't found what page that's on. But if you want to see how it sits in relation to the settlement, and as you rightly say, Dunkeswell is quite spread out in terms of several different settlements. Councillor Lawrence, what was your question?
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't actually a question. I wanted to make a statement that this is a very modest increase in the number of properties in a village. I know it's in the ALMB, but it's a 5% increase. And looking at the map, it looks very easy to walk or cycle to the airfield industrial estate. And I think it should be applauded that we're now looking at putting houses where there are employment opportunities, rather than building loads of houses and thinking about employment afterwards. But I think it's great, and I back this one 100%. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your
music
comments.
Music to my ears. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the lack of a school perhaps would possibly compensate for some of that reduced commuting, but we'll
can't have everything, Ollie.
No, and maybe, you know, if it gets big enough, it'll have its own school eventually. Okay, we need to move on to the next speaker then. So we're moving on to Fennerton, another Tier 4 site. And we've got Daniel.
Sorry, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. I'll leave the meeting now. Is that all right?
Okay, yes, please. Yeah,
Thank you very
Wendy
much.
will move you to the waiting room or the lobby or whatever we call it. And I should just say, anybody who wants to continue viewing the meeting can always do so on YouTube, of course. Okay, so Daniel Rogers, yeah, I can see his name on the screen there, from Bell Cornwell, and he's presenting on some land and buildings at Burland Mead in Fennerton.
Thank you, Chair. Wendy, are you okay to run the slides for me?
Yes, I'll pop it up now.
Thank you very much.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can see the cover page, Wendy. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So apologies. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide, Wendy, that would be great. Thank you. Yep. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your time today. I'm here on behalf of Consultative Burlands Mead Limited. They're the owners of the site, which has previously been given the HELAR reference Fenny 05. The site scores incredibly well. It's one of the highest scoring sites with a suitability rating of 5 in recognition of its, as being a good development option for the village. The site is known locally as Burlands Mead. It comprises a residential property in its curtilage, and also a large part of the site has historically been used for horticulture as part of a nursery business that ceased some time ago. The land area in total equates to an area of 1.4 hectares. And it is envisaged that the site could accommodate approximately, in the region of 43 dwellings from initial studies undertaken. Next slide, please, Wendy. Thank you. So yeah, you can see our slide, the site there outlined in red. Obviously identified, this was from the January committee reports and identified as a preferred allocation. Obviously it just illustrates where the site is in relation to other options for the village. And really we would just ask members to note the kind of suitability of the site in terms of its location amongst existing built form. It's very well related to the settlement and with limited sensitivities, and effectively comprises kind of infill development between the railway line to the north, the main road to the, northeast, the main road to the southwest, and then you have residential development booking the site, bookending the site at either end. Yeah, next slide, please, Wendy. Thank you. We've just put this just to, again, to really highlight the kind of the extent to which the site is within the village. So on the right, you have the current built-up area boundary for the settlement as part of the village's plan, and obviously the settlement boundary goes around our site. But if you flick back to the last local plan, the local plan prior to the one that's currently in place, Burlands Mead was actually within the settlement. So again, obviously we appreciate that 95 plan has no current weight in policy, but we raise it just to illustrate the point again about Burlands Mead being a logical part of the village, and again that the development of this site could be classed as a form of infill or rounding off, in filling a gap in what is otherwise kind of built up frontage ultimately. Yeah, next slide, please, Wendy. Thank you. Yeah, so just a bit of commentary on the site in relation to the settlement as a whole, and ultimately the relationship to key facilities within the village, with namely the primary school, the local convenience store, and obviously the railway station are highlighted there. So from the site entrance of Burland Mead, approximately 330 metres to the north is the train station, which is highlighted in green. So it's approximately a kind of 4-minute walk from the site to the train station. Slightly further, approximately 425 metres from the site is the village shop, which is, sorry, you can't see that, it's highlighted in yellow, and there's a Spa logo there. And then within 800 metres, and this is, taking the paved route that exists. So a 10-minute walk, you have the primary school, which is indicated by the orange circle. So obviously noting the importance that the draft version of the local plan places on creating walkable neighbourhoods, this would seem like a really sensible location to locate additional development in Fennerton. Next slide, please, Wendy. So we just wanted to zoom in a little closer level to just show you some of the site and its features. To the north, you can just see the edge of the residential estate that's known as the Burlands, and to the south you have Greenacres Close. Obviously the railway line can be seen abutting the northeast boundary, and as I said, the main Ottery Road that kind of runs along the western boundary. And obviously, despite the size of the site, it's a big site of 1.4 hectares. There is a very kind of immediate residential context that you can see there. The site is currently vacant. It's immediately available for development. That's very much the intention of the landowner. Obviously, historically, we've mentioned it's been used as a residential property and a nursery. And I think obviously in the centre of the site there, you can see some greenhouses and glass houses. And there's also outbuildings and workshops. The glass houses have come down due to the state of repair that they're in and being potentially dangerous structures. So at the moment, it is ultimately a flat, clear site. On the eastern side of the site, you'll see a landscape buffer that kind of runs adjacent to the railway line. Initial surveys show that it isn't kind of significantly ecologically sensitive in terms of protected species, but it is seen as a very positive feature that would be retained as part of any proposals. Next slide, please, Wendy. Just some initial street view shots again, just to give a bit more context. Obviously, the photo on the left there shows the current access into the site, which is relatively central relative to the plot, and you can also see the pavement that is just there on the photo on the left-hand side. The pavement that exists out the side of the site, which provides a continuous safe walking route to all facilities within the village. And then, really, the image on the right was just to try and give a perception of the depth of the site. Obviously, it's you view it from the street frontage, but actually, it is a significant plot that can make a really meaningful contribution towards housing. Next slide, please. And again, so the photo on the left, a bit more context, the photo on the left, that is the bungalow, the property that's there at the moment at Burland Mead. It's obviously not in the best state of repair, but clearly it's a very modest in appearance and coming to the end of its usable life. So it's replacement and loss and a much more efficient use of the site shouldn't be we would say should be welcomed. And then obviously the photo on the right is just a glimpse towards the residential accommodation at the Burlands, which shows obviously kind of modern new build development in close proximity to the site, which kind of forms that adjacent residential context. Next slide, please, Wendy. Okay, the photo on the left is the landscape buffer that exists on the railway boundary, and then the photo on the right is the neighbouring property to the south. So again, more neighbouring residential development. Final slide, please, Wendy. Apologies. Obviously, the scale of this isn't fantastically clear, but this is the kind of latest proofing layout that has been produced by the client. Thanks, Wendy. Thank you. We've been asked to obviously share this with you just to demonstrate obviously that our client is taking this very seriously. They wish to obviously see the site come forward as early as possible. This layout that you have in front of you is for a 43 dwelling scheme that would include a mixture of accommodation from apartments and affordable apartments and a series of 2, 3, 4 and a 5-bed property. The intention is to deliver affordable housing on site as highly as possibly can be achieved, and I believe figures of 50% are currently being looked at. And ultimately the net developable area you have there is apparently 0.97 hectares, so 43 dwellings being accommodated within that. Obviously, that layout of the scheme is being informed by relevant technical work with highways and drainage engineering, having input tree consultants and ecologists who are also working on the project to ensure that a technically robust scheme can be delivered. And you know, as far as we know at this stage, it is certainly a very robust and deliverable option and deliverable scheme. So taking all the above into account, we hope members will recognise the benefits of development at Burlham Mead and Fennerton. There is serious interest in the site from developers. It can make a contribution, obviously, to meeting housing requirements in the area, and being the size that it is, also hopefully built out relatively quickly. It's obviously make a meaningful contribution to housing land supply figures, and ultimately provide a really accessible development close to the facilities that do exist in Fennerton. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. We've got a couple of questions here. Councillor Lawrence again.
I'm having my say this morning. This looks, on the face of it, a very good infill site, and I'm all for it. There doesn't seem to be very much about employment opportunities locally, and I wonder if the speaker could comment on that. And also, I'm very mindful of the comments made by Councillor Bruce this morning earlier about flooding in the village. Fennerton floods all the time, and you know we do have a problem here. And does the speaker know what's going to happen about increased drainage facilities and so on for more properties? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, in terms of the drainage position, I know that and flood risk issues, they're being investigated by the engineers at the moment. We know, I think there's an existing culvert that runs underneath the site, which is important to the village. And I know the client and their consultant team have been engaging with relevant officers at East Devon to ensure that a development is laid out that keeps the line of that culvert clear, and it follows either road alignment or open space alignment, so there's no development over it, and it has appropriate buffers. Yeah, in terms of the employment question, Councillor, I mean, ultimately this site has been, yeah, as you can see, it's obviously been put forward to residential development. In terms of the request at the HELAR stage, and officers have obviously felt that it is suitable for residential development, but in terms of wider employment opportunities, I must admit that's not something we've looked at, but I suppose we would hope that given the good links to the train station, that there would be opportunities, you know, not just to work in Fennerton, but also further afield in other settlements in East Devon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Faithful, can I just remind members that we're looking for questions here, not statements.
Thank you, Chair. It's still about the flooding issue, as there's no acknowledgement. I mean, will they say anything about the fact that the bottom left-hand corner of the site is right where there's a major flooding issue on the road and in that area, and also sewage provision. There's directly opposite is the sewage pumping station, which is endlessly becoming overloaded, and that is in Ottery Parish, and that all goes in down into Ottery Parish residents. So I don't know what the developer will be doing to deal with those issues.
Councillor, I don't have a direct answer for you today, but I will pass these comments on, and I'm sure they're watching. So yeah, we know obviously that it is an important local issue within the village, and yeah, you know, like I said, I don't have an answer for you today in terms of what any specific site solutions, other than, you know, we are in a flood zone 1, so it's suitable in terms of flood risk terms for development. But I appreciate if there is further mitigation needed, then we'll have to look at that, and I'll report that back.
Thank you. I have a quick question. You suggested in your indicative layout that there might be some apartments and that would be affordable housing. Have you got any evidence of housing need? Have you done any surveys or anything?
I don't have that information with me today, Councillor. No, I don't. So the figure of 50% is taken based on kind of current development plan standards. But no, in terms of existing up-to-date figures, I don't have those in front of me. I suppose we go to the affordable housing team as a starting point, but no, I'm afraid I don't have that information with me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with no further questions, I believe we have a couple of other councillors have joined the meeting. So can we just take declarations of interest from, I think it's Councillor Bailey and Councillor Armstrong have both joined the meeting.
Hi, Councillor Davey. Jess here. No, I don't think I've got any interests. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And neither have I, thank you, Megan Armstrong.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll finish off Fennerton and then we'll have a break, I think, before we move on to Kilmington and the remaining settlements. So we have next Stephen Bainbridge from Greenslade Taylor Hunt again. This is presenting on land adjoining to the west of Beechwood Station Road in Fennerton.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for welcoming me back, members. I will present again if that's okay with you.
Yes, your co-host.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Hopefully, members can see this. Okay. So yes, I'm now here presenting on behalf of my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Hard, who are the landowners for the Fenny 08 site. So this is a location plan just showing the site, which comprises land on two sides of the road, there with the red circles. And then here is the plan that we submitted for your call for sites. Mark the sites A and B. Site A is located between Station Road and Green Lane. It measures approximately 2.85 hectares or slightly above 7 acres. Site B shows a parcel of brownfield land, previously developed land, measuring 0.7 hectares, which is 1.78 acres roughly. So the updates that I have for you, members, is that the landowners have now made an additional 2.2 hectares of contiguous land available. And we can have land is developable more so than the point in time we submitted our presentation, because now we have numerous bids. At the point of writing, I believe the bids were from house builders interested in option agreements, but there is also interest in land promotion agreements as well. So a very developable site from what we've seen in respect of the development community's interest. This is an updated plan for your members showing the available, suitable and deliverable land. The difference is the land to the west of the brownfield site, Site B. You can see now the additional 2.2 hectares, which I believe makes the site, the brownfield site, better connected to the to the edge of the village. Okay, and that picture again, just with some additional information. So Site A, which is the site to the north, there's been no change to the extent of that site. But it's interesting to note, members, that the client has a right to gain access to this land via the Wayne Home site. And they also have the ability to connect into the utilities there, which solves potentially any concerns you may have about feasibility issues in that respect. The additional land, the Site B site enlarged, As I said before, it better joins up the brownfield site. It doesn't sit on its own, albeit contiguous with the built-up environment. It draws the land back into the edge of the village, which is going to improve what the landscape character of the area and appearing as part of a continuous and comprehensive development, but also the opportunities for connectivity, improved pedestrian and cycle experiences, and also the environmental gains. I know members mentioned before the flooding concerns that the land here is part of the Fennerton flood alleviation scheme, and the extra land we've included now gives us opportunities for environmental benefits, which would include the provision of sustainable urban drainage systems as well. So I'll move on. So this was the site appraisal. Officers ranked the site 5 out of 6, jointly with 5 other sites. But this was not deemed to be a preferred option. Officers have suggested that the site is flat, unconstrained, and a reasonable development option. We believe the site could accommodate probably a ceiling of about 130 dwellings, with the environmental benefits, the biodiversity net gain we can provide to an even greater extent now with the available lands, and sustainable urban drainage systems. It will be in excess of the 83 dwellings suggested by officers, and probably between those two figures. But ultimately, we believe that the number of units should be set following the conclusion of landscape and master planning work. So that is the end of my presentation. I'd just like to suggest to members that although it's currently not a preferred option, that you consider its potential. It was a 5 out of 6 before. There are now additional benefits which we suggest should increase that grade by 1, and we'd be glad to work with your officers and yourselves as members to see the site progress. I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't see any hands up. I don't know if Ed Freeman wants to come in on that one, just to say whether officers would take the view that the extra land sort of slightly changes the rating there.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I really just wanted to make the point for members' information that the additional land referred to in that presentation in relation to Fenny_08 has not been submitted through the HELAR process and has not been assessed. So that isn't before you for your consideration today. I can't really comment on its acceptability for obvious reasons because we haven't assessed it. So I would just ask members to bear that in mind, that isn't part of what you'll be asked to consider by officers today. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Ed. I thought I ought to give you a chance to speak as you sat there so patiently anyway. Okay, I think we have one more presentation for Fennerton. Is Dan Yates in the meeting? Oh, yes, he is. So Dan Yates from Savills, who's presenting land at Sherwood's Cross, Fennerton.
And I'll be co-hosting with a couple of others as well, Chris Dolling and Angela Jacobs. Hopefully they're both on and able to join Wendy.
They're just in the lobby. I didn't recognise their names, so we're just letting them in now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see them coming in.
So I've made you co-host. So when you're ready, if you want to share your presentation.
Yeah. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, councillors. think we're going to be taking you through the land at Sewage Cross, northwestern Fennerton. As I just mentioned a second ago, Chris Dolling of Taylor Wimpey will be co-hosting with me, as will Angela Jacobs of Urban Design Box, who have been doing the master planning work for the site. So you would have seen the sort of context and visuals for the last couple of presentations, but just to show you specifically in relation to this site, where the site sits, the site is outlined in red and sits to the northwest of Fennerton. Historically, and through the council site assessment work, wider land to the west of Colstex Road, west of the site outlined in red, has been assessed through the call for sites process. It is the land in red that we are currently promoting, but it shows the context of the site, the proximity of the site to all the services and facilities, proximity to the railway station to the south, and how well the site is connected. We'll move on to a master plan and where we are with the sort of the master plan and the technical work with the site shortly, when I pass over to Chris and Angela. But just to point out that the work on the master plan for the site has very much been informed by a lot of the key principles that are coming through the emerging local plan, and rightly so. You know, key aspirations around moving towards low carbon development, aspirations for 20-minute neighbourhoods, boosting biodiversity net gain and habitat creation. And with the sites that we have in the land available, there are lots of opportunities to explore that, and really good opportunities to enhance those issues. I mean, the train station in particular is a key selling point, and does really allow us to explore growth at Fennerton, and move towards more active travel and low carbon development. In terms of the site itself, it has scored very well so far through the council site assessment work. Scores 5, which is very good, just below the top score of excellent. And as I just mentioned, apart from how well the site is connected to the services and facilities locally, I think that the opportunities for this site, and particularly with the land available compared to other options in the village, it's trying to deliver a quantum of housing which brings with it opportunities around more affordable housing. So the quantum of affordable housing that you could potentially deliver on a site like this to help with local needs, but also just trying to focus development around a place such as Fennerton, where there are opportunities to use low carbon travel and move away from use of the private car. And indeed, I think that the focus around active travel is aligned with the drive towards moving towards a sort of tackling the climate emergency generally. I'll just pass on to Angela, who was just going to take you through some of the context of the site, master plan, etc.
Thanks, Dan. So starting with our site analysis, the access for the site will be from Colstocks Road, and that can be provided via an all modes T-junction. The road would be widened up to the point of the proposed access so that it could accommodate 2 lanes of traffic. We're also proposing an emergency access just further north of the main access point, and also to provide a pedestrian link which will connect onto the existing footpath which runs along Colstocks Road, and providing access down towards the facilities within Fennerton. The location of the drainage has been dictated by the topography, with the attenuation and ecological area located at the lowest point of the site, which is along the western boundary. We've also got some neighbours to consider to the south and the east, and we'll be looking to back onto those properties which will protect their amenity. The main open space for the site would be to the north of the site, which would soften the approach into Fennerton when coming from the north down Colstocks Road, and also along the western side of the site, which provides a setting for the hedge banks. And also we've looked at where the existing edge of the settlement lies, and trying to tie in with that so as not to encroach any further into the countryside. So just moving on to the vision which we have for the site. Our aim is to create a walkable neighbourhood which is close to the heart of Fennerton, with an easy to navigate street layouts, which would encourage pedestrian movement. We want to provide good access to transport links, local facilities and services. And we're also proposing 2 new bus stops as part of the proposals, as well as that footpath link, which goes towards the existing facilities. There'll be approximately 120 new homes, with 50% of those being affordable properties. There's an opportunity to deliver community and recreational facilities, and we'd like to discuss what those might be further with the council. And we'd also be providing new walking routes in the extensive area of public open space, which would be a benefit for existing residents and the new homeowners. So if we just take a look at our master plan, the entrance from Colstocks Road, from that you then enter a linear quay space, which would have a Green Avenue feel to it, which could replicate the arrangement which is along Station Road within Fennerton. There's a main access loop, which then branches into residential streets and private drives, with homes overlooking the public open spaces along these. There are key buildings proposed in prominent locations, which would aid legibility when moving throughout the scheme. We're also proposing to back onto the existing properties with additional screening between the proposed homes and the existing properties. As I mentioned, there's a main open space at the entrance of the site, which provides a setting for the drainage area and also the footpath link. The main area of open space is to the north of the site, and that could include allotments, a community play area, walking routes, natural planting and picnic benches. But the use of this area really will depend on what local aspirations are, and we look forward to discussing that further if the site progresses. Just hand over to Chris for a bit further technical information.
Thank you, Angela. So we want to describe 2 key technical considerations, being landscape and ecology. And we see these as fundamental to a successful scheme. The site is relatively contained visually by the topography and the existing vegetation, but the creation of a new landscape buffer on the north and western edges would create a soft settlement edge and allow for screening from structural planting. There are no landscape designations for this on this site, and that cover the site's or the surrounding area, with the Blackdown Hills AONB over 3 kilometres away. In terms of ecology, there is an opportunity to provide an on-site biodiversity net gain, along with ecological enhancements for a range of species, tree and hedge planting. And we can also interlink that with biodiversity education incorporated into the play area space and the play trail for infants who will obviously be supervised by their adults. The highways and access on the next slide. Angela's alluded to the access from Colstocks Road. This will be a right-hand turn lane, and there will be new footways and bus stops, which would allow the 694 bus route to link the site to the village and train station. The new footways we envisage locating, this will allow safe pedestrian access from the site to the existing village, and it will also allow for hedge retention and new hedgerow to make sure that the rural character of that lane is retained. In terms of drainage and flood risk, the site is in flood zone 1, which is the lowest of any flood risk, and we were proposing an attenuation basin in the southwest corner of our scheme for the necessary greenfield runoff. And the SUDS proposes to control the surface water through discharge from a hydro break out to the local watercourse as per greenfield runoff and the necessary climate change percentage added on. In terms of heritage, there are 2 listed buildings in proximity of the site, Sherwood Cottage and Sheridan, and there's an important hedgerow crossing the site. These have been considered within our master planning exercise and used as opportunities, and we will ensure the appropriate setting of those assets with the development and structural planting along the northern and western edges, allowing appropriate screening. In terms of Taylor Wimpey and our sustainability credentials and objectives, we've released our own environmental statement, which is shared within our website for everybody to go and see. And we believe this to be industry leading. The main the main point of this environmental statement, and the headline is that Taylor Wimpey's homes will be carbon zero ready from 2025, and that's a really positive thing. Separate to this, we're now proposing car charging points for every dwelling on every future new scheme, which goes along without saying bike stands, home working, that the future is being fully embraced by our revised house types, because we are now factoring in working from home ability within those house types. Those house types also allow for and include wastewater and flue gas heat recovery. We're allowing for PV, and also the future seems to be that we're moving towards air source heat pumps. But all of this technical criteria will be assessed, and it will evolve over time. And we are putting significant R&D, research and development investment into sustainable technologies. The final point is that habitat creation is something that we are very much happy to do on all of our sites going forward, whether this is through community allotments, beehives, wetlands, whether it's any type of grassland and ecologically rich offers within our schemes. We want to achieve a biodiversity net gain of 10% on all of our sites moving forward. So just to invite any questions that anybody may have for Dan, Angela and I.
If you can stop sharing, I think, yeah. Oh, and here we go. Councillor Richard Lawrence, get in there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to check on something. It was glossed over a little bit, but I think I heard the speaker say that they were looking at 50% affordable. It might have been 15, but I think they said 50%. And I was quite interested to hear about the air source heat pumps as well. So would they confirm that the air source heat pumps could be powered by PV cells on the roof rather than taking electricity from the grid? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll take the first one, and I may just ask Chris to come in on the heat pumps question. But in terms of affordable, apologies, I did mention affordable, but without being specific on percentages or numbers. I think we're very much promoting the sites as including a policy compliant level of affordable housing. So Angela mentioned 120 dwellings. So the policy compliant level, i.e. 50% would be, or whatever ends up coming through the local plan, would be introduced as part of that site. So I think the point I was making was in exploring at a slightly higher quantum of development, what comes with that is the ability to deliver a higher overall amount of affordable housing compared to other options. So yeah, just to clarify, the policy compliance amount of affordable. And then on the heat pumps, I may just ask Chris just to come in from a Taylor Wimpey perspective.
Could I just ask before that, going back to this affordable, you mentioned the 50% again. Is it 50% or is it 15%?
It's not 15. No, I don't think it's ever been 50.
Because you mentioned 50 and Angela mentioned 50. I'm just, if it is 50% affordable, that has to be applauded in any shape or form. If I don't quite understand, because you both mentioned 50%. Is it 50% or isn't it?
Well, I think that the main point to make is the local plan is coming through, and in terms of the local plan review, that position, the emerging position, hasn't been fixed. So I think what we're saying is, in terms of the local plan review position, should that percentage change, then we would be aligned with that. I mean, maybe Ed can clarify a bit more, but it's the policy compliant position, which is not 15%. It's I think it's currently 15%, 50% in most areas of East Devon currently. So that's what we're saying on this site.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Just going to the air source heat pump question, if I may. That's it's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer. I would love to know the answer, and we would love to aspire to do that. That's what we're spending quite a lot of money in terms of our R&D on. I mean, it would be great to be able to say that all air source heat pumps could be solar powered, but we don't know the answers yet, and no house builder does. But we are looking into that. That would be a fantastic achievement to be able to do it. But all I can say is that we're looking into it.
I only mentioned it because we did have a planning application which we approved for a development in Clis St Mary, where all the houses are going to be air source heat pumps powered by solar panels. So, you know, it does make good sense.
Very much so. Very much so.
Thank you very much.
I think the panels might offset the electricity used rather than actually supplying it, because you'd have to combine it with a battery system in order to be really sure that was done. But of course, air source heat pumps use much lower kilowatt hours than other forms of heating anyway.
That's right. There is at present we know of the offset level, but it doesn't seem to be able that it would cover the full requirement needed for an air source heat pump. But like I said, these technologies we're spending a lot of money in terms of investigating their efficacy moving forward.
Good. I applaud that. Councillor Faithful.
Thank you, Chair. Could we have clarification about, I mean, it's good we're having a attenuation pond. Which way would the surface water runoff be going? Will it be going towards the level crossing, or will it be going into the river tail? Do we know? And also, it's nice to see bus stops, but the 694 runs once a day, 3 days a week. It doesn't really do that much. I don't know, would you be offering anything, improvements on a bus service or anything like that as a contribution?
Yeah. So just to come in on the if I may, on the bus service straight away. So should this this scheme be allocated and brought forward, when we would come to a planning application, we would expect the Highways Authority to look at a proportional contribution with regards to public transport and public transport upgrades as a result of the development. And we'd be very happy to contribute towards the local bus services. So essentially, and I've done this on a number of sites, what would happen is you'd look at the baseline, and thank you very much, you probably just quite accurately described the baseline, and we'd look to see what we could pay towards or pay for to upgrade that to the next level. So very happy to entertain that should this site come forward for application. In terms of the surface water, my understanding is that it will run out to the river tail, to the water course, but I would want to double check the route if that's okay, just to be sure. And in terms of the surface water attenuation, that attenuation will essentially, that is for this site, and so it will attenuate for the new future homes only.
Chair, if I can just interject, the 5 minutes question time is up.
Okay, right. So sorry, Councillor Skinner, we don't have any further time for questions. So
well, I never.
I mean, is it a quick one?
Yeah, it is actually.
We're doing quite well on time, so thank you, Sarah. But I think
one is I think the 50% affordable housing was tickle Councillor Lawrence's fancy and many others, and make no mistake that the developers will be going towards whichever plan we come forward with, and they'll work to that, and that's obviously what they do, because that's what will be the compliance. But the question that I really wanted to ask is that, and it was mentioned by one of the gentlemen, so I can't remember names, but who was saying that this is quite a different site from many sites, whereby the affordable housing level could be quite low. And I know why they're saying that, because Fennerton is of a certain type, and there's a certain type of housing and a certain type of housing mix, and you can see that the affordable level is just slightly, shall we say,
under the bar, but to be able to hit the types of people who would be able to afford the type of housing that would go there. And the affordable level, I could see why it would be more. But there was a phrase used earlier by a previous gentleman. And what I would like to look at is to talk about, when we talk about affordable housing, we consider them to be conventional. But what we do want is more housing sometimes of the bungalow type level, whereby some people looking at the older generation and even some infirmed people that are not necessarily older but are infirmed with whatever it needs to be. And this type of development, I think, and the term used was land hungry, that bungalows are land hungry. Now I know exactly what they mean, because when you can't get the value, you get the value in going upwards and not going outwards. But in a scheme like this, and knowing how, and I know Fennerton very well because I'm obviously live right next door to it, it's 2 miles up the road from me, in fact, even less. And where I'm coming from is saying that there are going to be opportunities that are kind of come along for us through the strategic planning process, whereby some sites could deliver different types of housing to other schemes. And I think it's really important that we button down the type of housing as to whom we're building houses for. And that's really, really important. And getting some bungalows on some of these sites, and particularly a site like this, in an area that I know very well, Fennerton, I think would be us trying to, from a council perspective, manipulate the way and the type of housing that could be built for the benefit of the people and building communities for the right people. I'll go back to our old question I always keep asking, whom are we building the houses for? That's a really fundamental point. So my question to the developers would be, do you or have you done a survey to identify the type of housing that you think you want to build by identifying the people as to whom you're going to build them for? That's my question. Thank you.
Chris, I suspect you'll probably want to come in on that. I think I completely agree with the sort of the first part of that was, I think, was more of a statement that, you know, exploring housing mix across the site and catering for all. So yeah, I think we're completely on board with that, and promoting the site, we are very much open to working with officers and members to keep that flexible, and also exploring the benefits of sort of single-story bungalows and the benefits that can have in creating a transition from the existing village edge into the sites. But Chris, I suspect you might want to come in on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really interesting question, and I've got it on a number of schemes, and essentially Taylor MP are very happy. We want to build the right homes in the right location for the local people and the people who want to live there. That's essentially the business model for any house builder. So in terms of bungalows, generally, we're happy to build bungalows. Now, in terms of whether they be under the affordable provision, that's for the local authorities' housing needs survey, and for the need to be put to us to agree, and we will fully embrace that as an adopted policy. In terms of the open market, we will be doing our market research, of course, to be understanding whether bungalows will sell, because it's actually been proven fairly recently in the last 2 years that you can get a premium for bungalows in certain locations. And so in terms of open market, we can entertain it. So I think the answer is actually positive, both on the affordable side within the provision. Should the council show the need, then we're very happy to meet that policy. And should there be a need on the open market in that locality, then we will test that, and we're happy to reflect that need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. I think we'll take a short break now. Shall we take 10 minutes and reconvene at 12:15? And we should then be able to hear from the Kilmington developers. Okay, Wendy?
I'm going to keep the live stream running, so if I could just ask you all to mute. Cameras off or on, that's okay, but just make sure you're muted, because people watching online will be able to hear what you say. We'll just pop a slide up as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, Chair, it's 12:15 when you're ready.
Okay, that's fine. Welcome back, everybody. And we're expecting presenters from or to do with sites in Kilmington now. Oh yes, I see Mr. Dalton Aram is there. So welcome, Mr. Dalton Aram. And you're presenting on land to the west and south of the Old Inn, Kilmington, and there we have it. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We're grateful for the opportunity to present to members on behalf of our client. We consider that the land to the west and southwest of the Old Inn, Kilm 10, should be a preferred allocation within the local plan, alongside the proposed allocation Kilm 9, land east of George Lane, Kilmington, rather than being a second best site. Kilm 10 is immediately to the east of the proposed George Lane allocation, sharing a boundary with it. The site is well related to the existing built environment of the village and to its services and facilities, and those either side of the A35. The site is also a short walk from public transport options, both along the A35 and within the village, meaning that the site would perform well in terms of accessibility and sustainability. Next slide, please, Wendy. The site assessment within the committee report states that the development of the site would have a high landscape impact. However, we would respectfully disagree with that assessment for the following reasons. Firstly, a planning application seeking outline planning permission for the erection of 5 dwellings, the formation of an access and on-site parking provision was submitted in 2017 under application reference 17-1209 OUT. While this application was refused by the council and then later dismissed on appeal by a planning inspector, it does nonetheless mean that the site has been subject to consideration with a formal site assessment through the planning process. Secondly, it should be noted that the appeal was dismissed on only 2 grounds. One, that the site was outside the built-up area boundary for Kilmington and would have conflicted with policies seeking to limit the outward expansion of the settlement at that time. And 2, due to the potential harm to the setting of the adjacent listed building, the Old Inn. Next slide, please, Wendy. It is important to note, however, that the inspector considered that the development of the site would not have harmed the landscape setting of the AONB, contrary to the site assessment provided within the committee report. The inspector's report highlighted that while the site is within, but on the edge of the AONB, the inspector said the site is not so topographically prominent that development upon it would undermine or compromise the landscape or scenic beauty of the AONB. Further, the inspector considered that the visual impact of the development would have been generally confined to its immediate surroundings. The allocation of the site within the local plan would resolve the first conflict, as its inclusion would mean there would be no in principle objection to the development. Next slide, please. Thank you. Turning to the potential harm to the setting of the listed building, the application was submitted in outline with all matters reserved, meaning that the detail of the proposal was to be agreed at reserved matters stage. However, an illustrative layout was submitted with the application, showing a horizontal alignment of 5 dwellings across the site from east to west, as shown in the image on the screen. The inspector dismissed the appeal as she considered that based on the information submitted in support of the proposal, it was not possible to determine the impact of the development on the adjacent listed building. The inspector considered that the existing context of the site provided a sense of space for the listed building that would have been lost as a result of the development and would have obstructed views of the listed building towards and from the recreation ground to the south of the site, consequently changing the way in which the Old Inn is experienced. Next slide, please. However, the council's conservation officer, in her consultation response to the planning application, suggested that to minimise harm to the listed building, the dwelling should be reorientated to show a north-south axis, which is shown somewhat crudely on the image on the screen now. Conservation officer considered that this revised approach would have reduced the mass of the built form on the setting of the listed building, allowed for wider views of the landscape beyond the site to be experienced as part of that wider setting when viewed from the car park and the A35, and in turn would better respect the pattern and urban grain of the area. So in summary, the conservation officer considered that the reorientation of the dwellings along the north-south axis rather than east-west would result in a more comfortable layout when balanced against the immediate and wider setting of the listed building. There are also considered to be additional benefits to the reorientation of the dwellings, in addition to a greater separation from the listed building, as it could also provide a potential linkage to or the extension of the recreation area to the south of the site. It could also provide a footpath link through the site to that recreation ground, which could also connect with the George Lane allocation to the west. It's therefore considered that it would be possible to formulate a revised scheme for the site that reorientates the dwellings to minimise the harm to the setting of the listed building, which would accord with the Conservation Officer's recommendations. Next slide, please. Turning to matters of access and highway safety, an access statement was prepared by a transport consultant and submitted in support of the 2017 planning application. That statement concluded that the proposal represented a sustainable form of development, transport terms. The location of the site provided sustainable transport options other than by use of private vehicles to access the services, facilities and amenity within the area. The projected traffic generation indicated that the traffic impact of the development would have been minimal, predicted to be an average of just one vehicle movement every 15 minutes during the AM, PM peak hours. The approach road network was considered acceptable to accommodate the low level of traffic that would have been generated by the proposed development. And the site access arrangements were discussed and agreed with National Highways. On-site provision would also accord with would have accorded with the local plan's requirements. And finally, as the tracking layout on that slide shows, the proposed dwellings would have been accessible for delivery, service and emergency vehicles. National Highways raised no objection to the 2017 application and considered that the proposed small residential development would have been unlikely to have a severe impact on the safe and efficient operation of the A35 trunk road. Next slide, please. So in summary, it's considered that it would be beneficial to bring forward the site Kiln 10 at the same time as the adjacent site Kiln 9. The two sites together would effectively infill a section of land between existing built form to the west, south and east, which in turn, the proposed allocations would link the built-up area boundaries in the east to that in the west and would be contained by the A35 to the north. Therefore, the allocation of the land would be a limited expansion of the settlement, but would not encroach into the surrounding countryside and would be of an appropriate scale and in an accessible and sustainable location. Members are therefore respectfully requested to consider the inclusion of this land, the land adjacent the Old Inn, as a preferred allocation within the draft local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton-Aram. Don't see any hands up with questions. Ed, do you want to come back on this one at all to perhaps discuss how we're going to proceed this afternoon in considering sites that are currently ruled out and whether we want to at least put them forward for consultation?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mean, this site isn't ruled out. It is currently a second best choice site. And I think the presentation's highlighted the issues with this site. I think from our assessment work, we feel, further work is needed to demonstrate that it would be suitable as an allocation, and hence that's why we've identified it as a second best choice. obviously Mr. Dalton may well have done some of that work, and maybe that's a conversation we would need to have with him moving forward if the site gains support. But I think I stand by the second best choice identification at this stage. You know, that further work would need to happen for it to move up in our assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ed. That's good. At least it will go out to consultation if it's a second best site. Okay, that moves us on then to our next presentation, which I think is Sidbury. And we have Dan Yates again from Savills, and this is land between Firs Hill and Hillside in Sidbury. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you. I will just share the presentation again. Let me just do that. Can everyone see the presentation okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So I'll be presenting the land south of Firs Hill, Sidbury, on behalf of the Land Promoters Land Value Alliance. The master planners for the site, LHC, have been involved heavily, and as I present, you'll see the visuals and the master plan options as we work our way through. Some of you may recall that we presented on this site at the beginning of the year, so some of the context information around the site may be familiar, but just to recap for those that weren't part of that session, that the red line for the site shows the land in between the main part of the village and south of Firs Hill, but moving down to Hillside, which forms the sort of lower part of the village. So it's a proportion of land in between the two parts of the village, and this is just to show where the site is, the connectivity of the site to the village core. The site is being promoted by land value alliances who are land promoters, but it's also on behalf of Sidbury Manor Estate, who control a lot of the land around Sidbury. So it's very much a joint promotion. The estate are very much involved. And it's a site that we have been promoting for some time through previous versions of the local plan, site allocation, villages plan, etc. But LVA, a Southwest-based land promotion company, an awful lot of experience in promoting sites like these, and we see this as an opportunity to deliver a scheme which we think the community can hopefully really get on board with, to try and bring a site in as a preferred allocation for Sidbury, which isn't currently something that is in the sort of the current version of the plan. The site is identified as the second best option as it stands, but an opportunity to deliver a scheme the community can support, exploring enhancements such as biodiversity, thinking about heritage, thinking about low carbon development and climate change aspirations. Moving on from an overview, and again, just for context, one of the key drivers for exploring the land on the right-hand side outlined in red, as opposed to the northern field, which some of you might recall it has been assessed through the sites assessment process and the call for sites, the land south of Firs Hill, which is now in as SID 33, whereas the wider site is SID 34. One of the reasons for exploring the larger site is the discussions we're having with Devon County Council and work around the separate work they're doing on delivering the key cycle route between Sid Ford and Sidbury. So it's not a zoomed in plan, and hopefully you can see it okay, but the white dotted line on the plan on the right hand side shows the phase one routes, and it's very much that's very much the focus for the county council at the moment, delivering phase one up to Hillside. The discussions we're having and we're about to have with officers in a more detailed way through pre-application, it is how we might be able to incorporate and deliver the second phase of the cycle link, so that you get the full connection all the way up to the heart of Sidbury, and key to that being an off-road connection, avoiding what is quite a tricky section of Chapel Street as you get to the top of Hillside. So working with the County Council and the master plan being very much driven by incorporating that pedestrian cycle link as a sort of fundamental driver for the site. Why Sidbury? I think at the moment, I've just mentioned that the wider site is labelled as a second best option. The northern field, Sid 33, was previously highlighted as a potential preferred allocation, and now isn't. I think Sidbury, in our view, should have a site allocated for development to deliver small-scale housing to meet local need, and I think what we're trying to do here is explore an opportunity on a site that is in reality the only site that could do that in the short term, and to deliver a mix of housing, importantly deliver affordable housing as well locally, but responding to constraints which we'll work through in a second. In terms of the site assessment work, so the two sites I've mentioned, just to clarify, Sid 33 top right is the site that had been looked at and has been assessed, and more recently Sid 34, the larger site that has been assessed now through the call for sites process. I think the key here is, whilst we presented on Sid 34 effectively at the beginning of the year, we see the opportunities and the benefits around promoting a larger land area, i.e. Sid 34. There's a number of benefits, particularly around trying to deliver an off-road cycle link, which Sid 34 can do, because it spans over land between Hillside and the main part of Sidbury. But what we're saying is, we're not dismissing Sid 33. We are still supportive of that and promoting, and we recognise that ultimately it is up to members to decide if either move into the preferred allocation category, and I know that there is obviously more work to do in that respect, but this presentation is all very much to talk around the benefits and the opportunities of Sid 34 and why that should be looked at instead. In terms of the site analysis, the opportunities I've sort of touched on already. So opportunities to explore a small-scale housing development at a village which is identified as a sustainable village in East Devon. Big opportunities around the delivery of the phase 2 cycle and pedestrian link through the site, and the off-road opportunities to do that, but recognising the constraints. This site and all the land around Sidbury all the way down to Sidmouth is A, O and B, and the topography is such that we do need to think very carefully about the scale of development, the density proposed, and the master plan and what we show, because and the lines that you might see on the plan here, just to show a recognition that we've got to think about where the top edge of the scheme might be, so that we're able to tie in with the existing built line of development. Obviously, the further you develop up the slope, the more of an impact on the A, O and B there will be. So there are sensitivities. We do have a listed farmhouse in the middle of the site as well. So there's an awful lot of work being done behind the scenes at the moment, which, as I mentioned, is going to involve pre-application discussions with the council to explore the technical aspects of the site, and those involve really thinking about those constraints and how the master plan can address those. Just to show some concept master plan options, and again, the reason for showing option 3 on the right hand side is just to show what we had previously presented, that Sid 33 can accommodate. So scale of development wise, broadly speaking, you would be looking at 38 dwellings on the northern field. Options 1 and 2, which cover all of the land between Sidford, Sidbury, sorry, and Hillside, you'd be looking at a quantum of 40 to 50. So I think the key message here is in terms of sort of overall numbers, and recognising that SID 34, i.e. option 1 and 2, are currently identified as suitable to accommodate 38 dwellings. There wouldn't be a significant jump, or we wouldn't see a significant jump in quantum or scale of development, whether you're looking at the top field, SID 33, or the overall, because I think we recognise that there are constraints. The site does need to be introducing a suitable scale and density. So by exploring the wider lands, we don't see the scale of development suddenly jumping up significantly, but we've explored 40 to 50 across the whole, and the master plan and the technical work we've been looking at has been based around that. But really good opportunities to connect future residents to the village core, to local services facilities, and the emerging cycle link down to Sidford and Sidbury is obviously a key part of connecting people to the local area, moving people away from the private car. So just to move to questions, really. So that's the end of the presentation, but yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. If you're able to stop screen sharing. Yep, we have a few questioners. Councillor Loudon, welcome. Oh, do you have any declarations of interest, Councillor Loudon? Because we haven't asked you yet.
None, to my knowledge, Chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. I'm the ward councillor that this site sits within, and I've now had the opportunity to hear Mr. Yates twice, because this is virtually the same presentation we had back in January. So that's useful, and I'm going to partly rely upon what he said back in January for what is now Sidmouth 33 and was Sidmouth 10, to supplement what he said today. So first of all, it's about connectivity. Do you know what the time of the last bus in and out of the village is now?
So I was just checking I wasn't on mute. I don't have that information to hand, but are you talking about the service that will then take you down to Sidbury?
From Sidbury to Sidmouth or Honiton. It has changed since you presented in January. It's now, the last bus is 7 o'clock at night. So connectivity is challenged. You say that the phase 2 of DCC's cycle path to link the village up to Sid Ford is fundamental driver for this site, and key connectivity to the Sid Ford Sidbury cycle path is important for this development. What is the current state of funding for that cycle path, given that this is phase 2 would go through your site, and there's phase 1 as well? Do you know what the current status of funding is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't talk for the county council, but what we have been informed is that the funding is in place for phase 1. Phase 2, the funding isn't in place, but that's why we're working with them to explore how our master plan can incorporate and deliver that second phase. So we're trying to work with them to explore how we can facilitate that. But yeah, their current work is as you know, is based on phase 1 as it stands.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you, because the last update from our county councillor was there is no funding whatsoever for either phase 1 or phase 2. So I will obviously have to go back to our county councillor on that one. This would bring 40 or 50 new properties to the village, and therefore one guesses quite a few families. Do you know whether there's any space at the primary school to take additional places?
We had checked previously. We haven't. I have to admit, I haven't over the last sort of couple of weeks checked the latest position. But I suspect, as most primary schools are in that position where they are probably getting close to capacity. So of course it is something that we would need to look at, and I think as part of our wider engagement, we would talk to the school and discuss with them how we might be able to help. I mean, what commonly happens is that you explore opportunities to enhance facilities or look at what options there might be to help, and that's absolutely what this site ought to be doing. But yeah, it's a good point that you raise, and it's all part of that discussion over local infrastructure and capacity, and it's a balance, isn't it, between the sort of the capacity of the local school, but also recognizing the current sort of need to deliver housing and affordable housing, etc.
Thank you. And before I just move on to the final question, just to say for your information, the school is regularly full, and the site, I understand, couldn't take any additional resources. The final bit is about access to the site. My understanding is that the preferred access is via the existing housing estate at Firs Hill. Is that correct?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that?
My understanding about the vehicle access to the site, or the sites, because they are effectively sites joined together, is through Firs Hill, the housing estate. Is that correct?
No. So,
right.
No. So we're about to submit a pre-application inquiry, and highways and access is very much something we need to work through with the officers. But there wouldn't be a vehicular access via Firs Hill. It would be potentially by Chapel Street into the top part of the site. There are other options we are looking at, and at the moment all access options are on the table. Really, we need to work with officers and to come up with the best possible solution, and whether that be one or more than one access point is not something we fixed yet. So the concept master plans we've shown are very much not with a fixed access point or agreed access solution at this stage. That is work that we need to do.
Thank you. I'm rather surprised that you talk about Chapel Street. Last time it was Firs Hill. With respect, I think you're going to have great difficulty, because there's three possible ways of getting in: Ebden Lane, the A375, which is Chapel Street, or Firs Hill. And I wish you luck in trying to use any one of them. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, that is 5 minutes up, just so you're aware.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking we were getting fairly close to our 5 minutes. However, as Councillor Loudon has monopolised that, we'll take the two remaining questioners. I ought to ask Councillor Miller if he has any declarations of interest.
None, just an observer here. Thank you, Chair.
Smashing. Excellent. Okay, Councillor Lawrence. And
very quick
brief,
question. Very quick. Can I take it that this new cycle route will link to the new planned industrial estate at Sid Ford that's just got planning permission? I need just a question to the.
Yeah, I think those sorts of questions, particularly around phase one, would need to be directed to the county council. I mean, our discussions have been very much based around how we can facilitate phase two, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to answer that, I don't think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Admirably brief. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. I have to suppose I declare that I'm a past resident of Chapel Street, and I was horrified to hear what you said to Councillor Loudon about access, because I did ask questions about access last time we met, and you did say it was going through the Firs Hills estate. how on earth are you going to get access into Chapel Street?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, we've still got work to do on it. We haven't got to.
You've got a lot of work to do, sir.
Yeah. I mean, just to clarify, I think when we presented last time, we didn't say that the vehicular access would necessarily only be via Furze Hill. I'm not sure we've ever presented on an option which showed that. I mean, pedestrian and cycle connectivity could certainly be delivered straight into the Furze Hill estate. That is something that is there and that we can utilise. But vehicular access, we're currently exploring via Chapel Street. What one option is into the northern field, what we keep referring to now as SID 33 via Chapel Street. I appreciate there are challenges around that, and we've got ongoing work in that respect. And of course, whatever we do present in terms of an option or solution, we've got to sit down with the highways officers and agree that with them. So we're not at that stage. And like I said, all options at the moment are on the table.
We have to leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pratt. Okay, thank you very much, Dan. And we'll move on now to West Hill. And we have Simon Collier. We've got 2 more presentations before lunch, so once we get through those, don't give up hope. So Simon Collier, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just see if I can share my screen.
Sorry, Simon, I just need to find your name to make you a co-host.
Thank you, Wendy.
That's right, I found you now.
Okay, so it should be okay.
Go for it.
Just while you're finding that, I'll just say this is land adjoining Windmill Lane in West Hill. So you just need to click the share screen button, Simon.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to. I've got too much open on my on my computer. There you go. That working? Fine, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Simon Collier of Collier Planning, and I'm presenting on behalf of Strongbox Homes regarding land adjoining Windmill Lane, West Hill, which is site West 4 in your assessments. There's just a photograph of the site from Windmill Lane. And as you'll see, there's an existing field access at the end of Windmill Lane into the site beyond it. So the site lies at the southern end of Windmill Lane on the western side of West Hill, and you'll see that it's identified edged in red on that aerial photograph on the slide that you should be able to see. It has a road frontage, as I said, with Windmill Lane on its northeastern boundary and an existing drop curb point of access. And there's another photograph of the road frontage and the existing drop curb point of access on the screen in front of you. The site is surrounded by development on 3 sides, to the north, east and the south. It's outside of any environmental designations. It does have trees covered by tree preservation orders on its boundaries, but these serve to provide good visual containment to the site. You can't see it from the surrounding area unless you're standing in Windmill Lane itself. And it's within walking distance of the facilities provided in West Hill. So an allocation could deliver a development of between 30 and 40 dwellings, including affordable housing and open space. Vehicular access can be gained from the existing drop curb point of access on Windmill Lane. Ecology surveys are being undertaken, and other initial technical reports have already been prepared and raise no constraints to development, consistent with the council's own assessment as a preferred allocation. The site is within easy walking distance through Moorlands and Beach Park of the village shop, school and facilities, and it's also close to the bus stops. Now, I just wanted to point out the plan, the aerial photograph shown on the screen there shows the most direct walking route currently available from the site to the village facilities, the school and the shop, which is much shorter than the route identified in the council's assessment. So whereas the council's assessment identifies that the site is within walking distance of those facilities, there is actually a much shorter route than the one identified, making it even closer on foot to those facilities, and that's shown on the yellow line there, which takes you through footpaths which perhaps weren't known to the officers who undertook the assessment. A meeting with Devon County Council has been held, and it was agreed that the existing drop curb could be used for access, and that the junction of Windmill Lane and Ben Darrett Road is acceptable to serve the development. Devon County Highways also agreed that the existing local pedestrian infrastructure is appropriate to accommodate walking trips from the site. Development of the site as envisaged would form a logical addition to the existing built form of West Hill and in a sustainable location. The site was initially put forward through the call for sites by the landowner, but Strongbox Homes, a local house builder, now have an option agreement on the site and are in the early stages of reviewing the initial layout ideas which had already been prepared. So that plan in front of you is an initial layout idea which Strongbox Homes, who have now recently taken an option on the site, will be progressing and making sure that it addresses appropriately the factors raised by the technical work that's being undertaken, and so that's really just an indicative plan at this stage and nothing more. But members may be aware that Strongbox developed the adjoining site to the south, which has now all been completed, and members may be familiar with the attractive affordable homes provided on that site, which are a feature on the front cover of the council's affordable housing SPD. So just to conclude then, given the absence of constraints and that the site is within the control of a house builder, the site is not only suitable, but also very deliverable and capable of meeting the housing needs of West Hill over the new plan period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And that's fantastic. And I rather thought Councillor Jess Bailey would have her hand up. So over to you, Jess.
Thank you, Councillor Davey, and thank you for the presentation. Where do you think the children from this site are going to go to school, please?
Well, we, as I said, Strongbox Homes have only recently taken out an option on the site. We're talking about allocations at this stage, so I would assume that as part of the work that has informed the council's site assessment, consideration of school places will have been taken into account, and like a lot of villages in East Devon and throughout Devon, I'm sure, that there may be issues with school capacity. That's not something we've looked into at this stage. But if there is an issue with school capacity, and I'm guessing from the question that there may well be, then that's something that we can work with the council and with Devon County Council's Education Authority to seek to overcome.
Thank you. Yeah, because the schools are full, West Hill is at capacity. So I'm a Devon County councillor, and I have specifically checked today, and the primary school and the secondary school are at capacity, and they're one class per year. So it's not as simple as providing, paying per child is it's not that straightforward. So the schools are full. Also, you talk about the connectivity, but at least some of that, the walk is unpavemented, isn't it? So could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, you're right, it is. It's a much shorter walk than, as I say, the council's assessment identifies, and there would be potential to make that an even shorter walk if the site was developed along with the adjoining site, which I think is also a preferred allocation of the council at this stage. So there's plenty of opportunities for walking facilities to be improved. But as I also mentioned in the presentation, discussions with Devon County Council Highways, which have already taken place, have suggested that they would be satisfied that the walking route that is already available from the site to the facilities is acceptable and not dissimilar to walking routes within many, if not all, Devon villages.
Thank you. And I think I'll probably just ask one more question. Have you done any assessment on the trip generation? So obviously people saw it was on a really tiny little road, and I'd like to know how many trips you think will be generated from the development, because I believe it will be a great number. And I also believe, I mean, there have been various discussions about sustainability, but it's widely recognised that people commute out from West Hill. So what's the trip generation and where are people going to go to work? Because there's a general, we have low work options in West Hill. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have figures on trip generation. Obviously, that would be a matter that would need to be looked at before a planning application was submitted. Obviously, we're talking about proposed allocations at this stage. And as I said, Strongbox, having only recently taken an option, are at early stages of the planning process in that sense. What I would say, though, is that from the discussions with Devon County Council Highways that have already taken place, no concerns about the suitability of Windmill Lane, or indeed the junction of Windmill Lane with the adjacent road that you have to access Windmill Lane from, have caused any concern. And I think that, you know, we're looking at a scale of development that would be fairly modest generally in size, and so chip generations would not be considered to, they wouldn't be significant, but I don't have the figures at this stage, I'm afraid. No, sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Simon, if you move your microphone down a little, we're getting a little bit of
apologies,
crackle from you. Okay.
Yeah, we're just approaching 5 minutes again.
Yes, I thought so. Okay, Councillor Skinner, if you can keep your question brief, please.
Well, I've never been known for that, being brief, but I'll have a go. I think the one I want to sort of aim at while the gentleman's here, and the question that Councillor Bailey has asked, because the question about the schools being full, I mean, that question will be raised at absolutely every single site that comes up. And actually, it's a county issue. So perhaps Councillor Bailey could try and force a little bit more from a county perspective about the school numbers and what they're doing about it from their perspective. But just to clear on this, Ed, what I want to know is that the presentations that are going to be put forward, talking about school and school numbers and where they're going to come from, how does that fit within us doing our presentations here today? Because if applications are going to fall down on school numbers as an example, this is a very relevant question that Councillor Bailey's asked. I'm not decrying that at all. It's a very, very open and honest question and needs to be answered. But we need the answer to that question, because as we go on today, if we're going to come up against schools, it's an issue, and we want to know what's happening about it. So, Ed, could you fill us in a little bit? Let's just take West Hill, which I actually think West Hill, if you look at all the suggestions that are coming forward, it's almost like under siege. I won't be supporting all of that, I can tell you. But getting the best sites come forward, that's fine. But Ed, could you add a little bit of weight to that? Because I think we could ask this question all day long.
Through you, Chair. It's a very complex issue, fundamentally, school places. I think the information we had about West Hill Primary was that it has some limited capacity, is what we've been told. So I don't know if Councillor Bailey has more up-to-date information than that. But in any event, you know, I think we've agreed that there isn't capacity at West Hill Primary to take the level of growth currently shown as first choice. in terms of the scoring that's before you. But fundamentally, it's very difficult because it affects, demographic change in the future will affect numbers of school places needed, parental choice in terms of where people choose to send their children. So it's very hard to forecast where there might be need and demand. So I don't see that that's a reason not to put forward sites out to consultation at this stage and seek views. But obviously, when we come to firm up allocations into a publication draft plan, we will need to have a clear idea as to how those needs can be met. And that's further work that needs to be carried out in partnership with Devon County Council.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Chair, for letting me ask the question. I think if I may just very quickly, if I may just say to that, it's very relevant that Councillor Bailey's asked the question, very, very correct, very right, and all those things. But if that's where we are, then we need to know, we know where we are with West Hill, but it's also with other schools. It's about how we're going to move these schemes forward. And I think, Chair, through you, it was important to know that from what Ed has just said, because it's not a stopper for why we wouldn't put these schemes forward, but it was certainly something that as they start to come nearer, if I take on what Ed was just saying there, as they get nearer the scheme, it's going to be important that it will become a factor, and we will need more evidence from Devon County Council about how they're going to overcome or address the issues of what will be school places, particularly when we keep driving on. And we've been having it today from Councillor Lawrence all day, has been talking about affordable housing. Affordable housing is the younger end for younger people with children. That's what we're trying to promote. And we need to make sure we got the string and the thread that goes through for the delivery and for the schools to be in place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Skinner. And perhaps Ed or perhaps Councillor Bailey can answer this question. Quite a lot of village schools actually get filled up by people not from the village. Is there any obligation on schools to take up those in the immediate catchment area, rather than accepting people from outside that particular village? I don't know if that's the case with West Hill, but it certainly is with some other schools.
I think, Chair, it does come into issues like that, and as I say, there's parental choice at play here as well, and that's why these issues get immensely complicated. Obviously, fundamentally, I agree with the principle that we need to be satisfied that adequate school places in the locality can be achieved to meet the needs arising from these developments. But I think fundamentally, we're just talking about putting sites out for consultation at this stage and seeking views. Once we can firm up the allocations, part of that process needs to be further conversations with Devon County about how those school needs might be met. But there are various options, as you say, in terms of catchment areas for schools, school bus provision, that potentially where there is shortfalls of busing children to the next nearest school. But there are certainly issues, I know in that area, I don't know specifically about West Hill, but one of the issues with Tipton St John's primary school, for example, is children being bussed out from Ottery St Mary to it. And I think when we had a presentation from Devon County Council on their proposals for trying to replace Tipton St John Primary School at Ottery St Mary, they were saying that the majority of the children in the school are actually from Ottery St Mary. So there are obviously issues there in terms of children being bused from or transported from one location to another that potentially opens opportunities in the future for how that's controlled and who goes where. Fundamentally, from a planning perspective, I think the issue is ensuring that ultimately that there is capacity to meet the needs coming forward, and that's something that we will obviously take forward in further work with Devon County Council as we firm up proposals as work on the local plan progresses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. Councillor Bailey, you've got your hand up again. If you can be brief, because we have another presentation to hear about West Hill.
Yes, maybe I'll save my comments for later, but it's generally about sustainability. And you know, talking about it's only going out to consultation, but my concern is that you're going to be baking in unsustainability by building houses where there's no school places. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that finishes that one. Thank you, Simon. And we'll move on to another Simon Tofts from Blue Cedar Homes. I think, yes, I saw him down there. And this is land to the north and east of Eastfield, in West Hill. There it is on your screen now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davey. Can you hear me all okay? Great.
We can, thank you.
So this site is in two parts. The first part to the north, it measures circa sort of 2 acres, and then the site to the southeast of the layout before you, so the yellow blob to the east of the existing development is just over 1/2 acre. So it's in two parts. It's allocated or indicatively allocated for 31 dwellings, and we would work towards providing a layout, which I'll come on to in a second. And any scheme that we come up with will, of course, include a policy compliant affordable housing. Existing development from the site is to the north, east and the south, including the scheme that we have built out. These sites, or this site, we'll put it as one, excuse me, is achievable and deliverable now. We own the site, so it's in our ownership. We haven't come up with a scheme or a layout yet. We want to engage, obviously, with yourselves, the local planning authority, and also local people. So there is no scheme or layout before you, but it's something we will obviously look to work towards, subject to the outcome of this. Reports are ongoing and have been undertaken, including ecology and trees and drainage. And essentially, as I said, I was just sort of highlighting really, what our ownership of the site now, and it being deliverable now. And that's really my only comments to make.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions on that one? Councillor Skinner.
And I'd just like to ask a question, if he would, please, Mr. Toffs. What sort of numbers are you looking at?
We haven't come up with a scheme, as I mentioned. It's earmarked for 31 dwellings in the draft local plan. But as I say, we haven't looked at any numbers and indeed a specific layout. There was mention of potentially single story, which fits in with some of the existing dwellings on Perry's Gardens to the east. But as I say, we haven't got a figure or a number or indeed a layout scheme to share with you at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailey.
How many school places do you think this site will generate? That's my first question. And my second question is, sorry, how many school children do you think this site will generate? And my second question is, it's heavily wooded and we're a woodland village. So how are you going to, because I can see the trees, particularly, well, on the lower part and on the upper part. And I'd like to know what work, I think you said you've done, commissioned some tree reports, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about keeping trees safe.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of your first question about how many places or school children we might generate from the scheme, I don't have that information, I'm afraid, at this stage. Obviously, I've heard what was mentioned in the presentation previous to this, and the school capacity being full. So that's something clearly we're going to have to work with and with the county and also the local education authority. In terms of your second question on trees, there are some which are protected, and actually the scheme to the south, whilst we're not talking about that site is managed as a retirement and open market and affordable development. So that site is currently managed to the extreme south. We would clearly not build within any root protection areas, and they would all be protected. We, as a developer, like trees and sort of work with trees and are not, not looking at removing any. So we will work within the, existing constraints that those trees provide, and obviously it provides some form of screening or protection also. So it's they're an attractive feature, clearly.
Okay, thank you. Now I know trees are very dear to Councillor Bailey. You mess with them at your peril. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the presentations this morning. So that means we can now break for lunch. How long should we take? It's about 1:10 now. Any suggestions? Shall we take half an hour or 1:45, shall we say?
That's fine.
Give us just over half an hour.
It's good by me, Ollie.
Yep, okay, and then we can go on to this afternoon's consideration of all the village sites. Okay, so thank you everybody. Thanks to all the presenters who've brought their presentations this morning, and hopefully Councillor Arnott will be feeling up to chairing us this afternoon.
Chair, before you go, and just to sort of like let members of the public watching online, I think what I want to do is separate the presentations from the actual debate. So I'm going to stop the live stream now, and then probably sort of directly after I've stopped it, I'll restart it, showing the slide, so members of the public know when to we're going to recommence. But just to let you know, the presentations and the debate will be separated.
That sounds like a very good idea for anybody wanting to view them. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay.